Gang, what's up? Merry Christmas, season's greetings, all those funny things. Happy Yuletide, Happy Hanukkah, whatever they say in Islam. Here we go, Merry Christmas. We're going to take a quick look at some Christmas greetings from some politicians, and then we're going to get right back into Canadian federal politics. Let's take a look. It's going to be quite a ride. We've got a lot of content here to show this evening. Just for the lonelies that are out there on Christmas Eve, I just lost my mom. Not that long before that, I lost my dad. I'm here without any family. It's the way it goes. It's a circle of life, I guess. Anyways, we'll get right into Canadian federal politics all night long. Let's check out what we have in the lineup. Let's go. Smash the like, hit subscribe, get ready for a trip. Like, Canadian politics is messed up, gang. This is evidence.
Merry Christmas, everybody. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's a time for music, song, faith, roaring fireplaces, family gatherings, and of course, procrastinating husbands who waited too long to order online and now dread the shopping mall as punishment. But most of all, it is time for billions of Christians to celebrate the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. God sent His Son to live a perfect life, die for our sins, and save us all. He chose to send Him in the humblest place and toughest conditions, born in a manger of all places, because there was no room in the inn, surrounded by little-known common people, not royalty. Yet, His eternal message of hope remains alive 2,000 years later. And never before have we needed so much hope. Too many people go to bed hungry, unable to afford food, worried they'll miss their next rent payment. Young people doubt they will ever afford homes or start families. Seniors live in fear of crime and chaos in our streets. Yet, there is much room to be hopeful, precisely because of the great common people who do such good in our country and our world. Volunteers are rallying to food banks. Today's youth are more determined. They work harder and longer than any generation since the Second World War to save and build their future and ours. Our soldiers inspire us with their courage, and our police never give up on keeping us safe. All around us, we see inspirational work of the common people who are not famous, but are heroic, reminiscent of Christ's example. This Christmas, let us give thanks to them. Give thanks for our families. And most of all, give thanks for the message and meaning of Christmas. So happy holidays, happy New Year, and most of all, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, Canada. In a more divided and uncertain world, the holiday season is an opportunity to slow down, reflect, and focus on what really matters. This is a season of joy for families, and I hope you find time to rest, reconnect, and celebrate with the people that you love the most. For Christians, Christmas holds a special meaning. It's a time to celebrate the birth of Jesus, to rejoice in the light that He brings, and to recommit to follow His example of service, forgiveness, and generosity. For Canadians of all traditions, the holidays remind us that there can be hope after despair, that light follows darkness. This is a time to remember those in need of comfort, those struggling to get by, those grieving a loved one. A time to help with a call, a visit, or an act of kindness that reminds someone that they are not alone. And although this year has brought more than its share of challenges to our country, we've also been reminded that we are fortunate to be part of one extraordinary, generous, and caring nation. That we're strongest when we're united, when we look out for each other, when we take care of each other. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, Canada, from my family to yours.
The Christmas season is finally here. Homes across Canada are filling with warmth, light, and a little extra cheer. It's time to slow down, take a break, be with the people we love, and enjoy the simple traditions that make Christmas so special. Christmas in our community reminds us of what matters most: family, faith, and community. Whether it's lighting candles, heading to church, baking, caroling, or exchanging gifts, this all connects us to the generations before. They bring comfort, hope, and a sense of belonging. But we also know that for too many Canadians, this year feels harder. Groceries, rent, gas, home heating, everything costs more. And it's tough to think about Christmas dinner or gifts when the bills keep piling up and there's just not enough. It's supposed to be a joyful time, but for too many families, it's stressful. Still, Christmas reminds us that brighter days are ahead. It's a moment to lean on each other, to show kindness, and to lift those around us. A helping hand, a small act of kindness or generosity, you never know how much it may mean to someone who's struggling. May the spirit of Christmas fill your home with peace and your heart with hope. From my team to yours, we wish you and your family a blessed Christmas and a joyful New Year.
Oh, yeah. The toughest decision of my life, whether to give up being a member of Parliament, to seek the leadership of the Conservative Party of BC, and to be the next Premier of British Columbia. Over the past few weeks, literally thousands of you have reached out over social media, email, and text urging me to run, and I share all of your concerns about the future of our province. The NDP have flooded our streets with drugs. They've abandoned our resource sector, especially the forest industry, with new mills closing almost every single week. They've undermined property rights and scared off investment with vague and dangerous legislation like DRIPA, while they have doubled the provincial debt, and their reckless spending and economic mismanagement has led to a cost of living crisis, especially on housing, that has spiraled completely out of control. Young families and millennials like me, not to mention seniors on fixed incomes, can't afford to live in the province in which they were born and raised. British Columbia is the greatest province in the greatest country in the entire world, and the people who call it home deserve a government that works for them, a government that is a lot better than this. And yet, without the revival of the modern BC Conservative Party, the situation could be even worse. As a founding member of that party, we have helped reshape the culture and public opinion on the issues that matter. Just a few short years ago, you would be called fringe for being against the decriminalization of hard drugs, or opposing the carbon tax, or calling for DRIPA to be repealed, or to end the sexualization of our kids. Now, these aren't just conservative opinions, but opinions widely held by most British Columbians. This only happened because of you and the movement we built. And it is essential that the future of this movement remains in the hands not of downtown Vancouver consultants or large third-party organizations, but in the hands of the common working man and woman, of everyday, hard-working, tax-paying British Columbians who love our province and our incredible country. These are the people who ought to determine the future of the Conservative movement and British Columbia. These are the people who I fight for and will continue to fight for every single day. However, as a member of Parliament, I must consider first and foremost the interests of my constituents and above all, the interests of our country. Last April, Canadians elected a Liberal minority government. Since that time, Mark Carney has pursued a deliberate and transparent strategy to bribe or otherwise convince morally bankrupt MPs to cross the floor with an aim of achieving an undemocratic majority government, a government that Canadians didn't vote for, a result that would be entirely unacceptable for my constituents and the vast majority of Canadians. While the risk is small that my departure could upend the balance of power in Ottawa and give the Liberals that majority government, any risk is too great a risk for me. Secondly, since this fall, there has been a deliberate and orchestrated attempt by Liberals and some in the media to undermine the leadership of Pierre Poilievre. While he has always made clear that he would support whatever decision I made, it is also clear to me that the media and Liberals would attempt to spin my departure as some sort of loss of confidence in Pierre, or worse, a betrayal. A fact that would undermine his leadership and our conservative vision that I believe is so essential for this country, for Canada to live up to its truly awesome potential, and for me to be able to deliver the needed change for the people of my riding. I have always said that I will make all decisions based on what I believe is in the best interest of the constituents that I represent and our country. That I will always speak the truth and stand up for what is right, not what is politically correct. And the truth is that right now, I believe that I can best serve my constituents in Canada, in Ottawa. So that is where I will be, continuing to represent and going to work for the great people of the North Island and Powell River as their Member of Parliament, fighting for them and all Canadians in the House of Commons, continuing to call out policies that target our resource sector and resource workers, that punish law-abiding firearm owners while allowing repeat violent offenders to walk free, opposing bills like C9 that restrict free speech and freedom of religion, and standing against a budget that borrows even more money than Justin Trudeau was planning while leaving future generations with the bill. I understand that some of you are hoping for different news today, but I want to be clear. We need a common sense conservative government, federally and provincially. As a federal MP, I ask that you do your part in ensuring that we will have a solid conservative partner in the BC government, a conservative government led by a conservative premier who will build pipelines, create jobs, and help us unleash the potential of British Columbia. And I commit to you that I will not be silent in this process. Thousands of people have contacted me looking for a movement to join that will represent their voice. And the stakes are high. And while at this time I will continue fighting relentlessly in Ottawa, I will also be looking for a partner here in BC that we can work with to continue building this incredible country. Thank you, as always, for all your support. Merry Christmas, and have a very happy New Year.
Oh, yeah.
We begin tonight in the Yukon after 3 weeks of around.
Oh, yeah.
Hunter, I've been pissed off for a long fucking time.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm not just talking about you, and I don't want to get you in trouble, but I can like almost feel like the resistance from your audience of this message coming from me. But let me give you this one. He's in the fucking Epstein files, man.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we're not getting him. And it's like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah.
Susie Wiles came out today in a Vanity Fair article. Have you read that?
No.
It says that his chief of staff said that he acts like an alcoholic, and that of course he's in the Epstein files, and that Pam Bondi completely screwed this thing up and totally screwed them all. That's his sitting chief of staff on the record in Vanity Fair that came out today. And what are we supposed to be distracted by? We're supposed to be distracted by the absolute ugliness of someone taking the barbaric murder of a beloved liberal. He's a beloved liberal, but he made like the movies of my that made my generation. A Few Good Men, Misery, Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally. Like, my God, just as an artist alone, like, Jesus God, let's give the guy the reverence that he's due for gifting humanity The Princess Bride as a movie. And he says that basically he was murdered because he was infected by Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah,
we'll
deserved throw the tweet or whatever you call it on Truth Social. I don't,
yeah,
whatever that. We'll throw it up on screen so everybody can read it. I think the response that I saw from that was fucking horrendous.
Trade. Still to this very day, there is no trade deal.
Right.
You're a good friend of President Trump, we know. How surprised are you that Mark Carney has not been able to strike a deal for Canada?
I don't shill for politicians. I really shill for policy. And I've always said there should be a much stronger connection between the two economies, Canada and the United States, because they have the largest market on earth. We have the largest base of commodities that they need. And we both have to bulk up against the Chinese eventually. That's going to happen for sure. Specifics to what killed the trade deal is this. There was a deal at around 10% just a few weeks ago, maybe now it's 2 months ago, on 4 basic important commodities, including aluminum for car parts, at 10%. Then Ford decided to roll that video on the Super Bowl. Now, unless you understand how Trump works, you would have not done that because he's a very bombastic guy. And if you want to get policy done, you have to understand you don't do stuff like that. I'm not telling Ford what to do. I'm just saying the reason we don't have a deal is that video.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened.
It's a testament.
And we are nowhere right now. And Carney knows. Look, I didn't vote for Carney, but I want him to win. And I think Canada is in a wonderful position now on a new thing that we've never had ever. Data centers, because we have the lowest cost of power in Canada.
Okay.
So we have to attract those billions of dollars to come up here.
Yeah.
Nobody trusts us yet because over the last decade under the idiot king, we destroyed our relationships with all the sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah.
None of them want to invest in Canada, so we're hoping that changes.
For Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, should judges be allowed to use a non-citizen's immigration status to issue a more lenient sentence to a non-citizen convicted of serious crimes like sexual assault, just so that they can avoid deportation? The answer is no. And tonight, I'm pleased to speak to Bill C-220, the One Law for All bill, which represents and reasserts the principles already laid out in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act with regard to the deportation consequences associated for non-citizens convicted of serious crimes like sexual assaults in Canada. The vast majority of people in Canada who have immigrated here abide by our law. So removal from Canada for non-citizens after being convicted of a serious crime is a no-brainer to protect everyone, the value of Canadian citizenship, and frankly just every person who resides in our country and plays by the rules. After a decade of liberal post-nationalism and excessively high immigration levels, accepting this change would allow the government to demonstrate respect for Canadian citizenship by affirming that at a minimum, the privilege of residing here for non-citizens depends on adherence to the rule of law. And everything that I've outlined, and that I will outline tonight, will show that beyond rote partisanship, there is no reason for the government not to support this bill. In fact, to save Canada's pluralism, the government must start admitting its errors with regard to immigration and working across party lines to accept common sense solutions. Colleagues, recent public polling shows that support for immigration among both Canadians and newcomers is at an all-time low. This opinion should shock and spur every person in this place to action to find ways to solve this problem. And that's what I'm trying to do here with this bill today. Thankfully, the reason why Canadians don't support immigration the same way they used to is not because Canadians are pointing the fingers at immigrants. Rather, Canadians who are unhappy about immigration are pointing their fingers where the blame should be placed, at the federal government who has, over the past decade, brought too many people in too fast for housing, healthcare, and jobs to keep up, while simultaneously legislating a doctrine of post-nationalism that asserts that there is no Canadian national identity, which includes things like an equanimous judiciary for non-citizens to integrate into. But Canada is at a tipping point. The government must quickly act to restore an immigration system that they broke. And if the government won't act, which it hasn't, then Parliament must. So in the spirit of nonpartisanship, I have used my private member's bill slot to correct one of the many areas that the government needs to act on to fix the immigration system. Later tonight, myself and my colleagues will move many amendments to Bill C-12 in a further effort to do the same. But back to this bill. To be fair to everyone and to start to prevent the further erosion of Canada's tolerance for immigration, we must ensure that non-citizens who commit serious crimes like sexual assault face the consequences that are already set out in our law. At a bare minimum, colleagues, non-citizens who abuse the great privilege of being in our country by committing a serious crime like sexual assault should face the deportation consequences that are already outlined in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. And here's how we can do that. The bill before us tonight amends the Criminal Code by adding a new general sentencing principle under Section 718. This is the section of the code where Parliament has exercised its right to provide guidance to the courts on how convicted offenders ought to be sentenced. My bill proposes to add a simple one-line new principle under Section 718.202, which states that when sentencing a convicted criminal who is not a Canadian citizen, a court shall not take into consideration any potential impact the sentence could have on the offender's immigration status in Canada or on that of a member of their family. This simple one-line provision ensures that provisions that are already outlined in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act are enforced in sentencing non-citizens convicted of serious crimes like sexual assault. That is the how, but here is the why. In recent years, there have been multiple instances of judges issuing sentences to non-citizens convicted of serious crimes that were designed to allow them to evade deportation. The net effect of this practice in considering a non-citizen's immigration status in order to give them more lenient sentences to avoid deportation is to create a two-tier justice system between non-citizens and those with Canadian citizenship. This is unfair and it is antithetical to the principles of fundamental justice and has eroded Canada's immigration consensus. Here are but a few examples of the rampant, excessive number of times non-citizens convicted of serious crimes like sexual assault have been issued two-tiered, lenient sentences in very recent history just so that they will avoid the deportation consequences already set out in the law. A non-citizen from India pleaded guilty to no fewer than 4 counts of voyeurism, which left his female victims with intense fear and anxiety and emotional distress. He was sentenced to 5.5 months jail. Why? Despite the judge admitting that 6 to 12 months would have been a more appropriate sentence. This was to avoid deportation, and the judge even said this. In a 2024 Calgary case, another non-citizen from India was granted a conditional discharge for attempting to purchase sexual services from a 15-year-old girl. They did this to allow him to preserve the eligibility to become a Canadian citizen and avoid deportation. The judge cited in the sentence the devastating collateral immigration consequences of a harsher penalty. What of the victims? A non-citizen in Canada on a visitor permit was convicted of twice groping an 18-year-old woman's genitals under her skirt as she stood at a bar to buy a drink. This person, this non-citizen, received a discharge from the judge so that he could have a deportation appeal. In March 2024, a 24-year-old non-citizen from Surrey, BC, received a conditional sentence of 2 years less a day for aggravated assault and possession of a weapon after stabbing a stranger. Sounds serious, right? Well, what did the judge do? The judge rejected the Crown's 4-year jail recommendation so that the non-citizen would be able to avoid deportation. In October 2025, just last month, Roosevelt Rush, a non-citizen from Jamaica, had his cocaine trafficking sentence halved from an expected term while already serving 6 years for fentanyl and firearm offenses because the judge wanted to help him avoid deportation. In 2024, in BC, a non-citizen was convicted of fraud and received a 6-month sentence, which a judge shortened from 10 months so that he could what? Avoid deportation. In 2024, a non-citizen from Somalia was convicted of assault with threats against police and had their jail time cut short to evade deportation too. This one was a refugee who committed these crimes while getting the benefit of Canadian sanctuary. All this consideration for non-citizens convicted of serious crime to avoid deportation. But what about the victims? What about the value of Canadian citizenship or the responsibilities associated with being in our country? Being in Canada can't just be about receiving the privileges and the benefits of being in Canada, which are great. It also has to be about adhering to the responsibilities associated with that privilege, and that includes adhering to the rule of law. There are many other examples that illustrate the trend of immigration status being considered in sentencing, with criminal lawyers now routinely arguing for lighter sentences so that their non-citizen clients can evade deportation or denial of citizenship under IRPA's current provisions. Let me explain why this is happening. Ever since the Supreme Court ruling in R versus Pham, the courts have been giving greater consideration to collateral immigration consequences when sentencing. To be clear, this court ruling explicitly ruled that this consideration does not constitute a charter right or a remedy or a charter breach. In fact, this ruling doesn't even mention the charter once. Further, the court ruling also made clear that the flexibility of our sentencing process should not be misused by imposing inappropriate and artificial sentences that, in fact, to do so would circumvent Parliament's will. That is clearly not what's happening. Activist judges have taken this ruling as evidenced by the proliferation of examples that I have given and twisted it beyond its scope in order to allow non-citizens who have been convicted of serious crime to get more lenient sentences to avoid deportation. That is what is happening. Meanwhile, Canadians would not be given the same consideration. So we have a two-tier justice system. The will of the courts cannot be trusted if it is allowed to go unchecked, as it clearly has in all of these cases. My friends and colleagues, it is long past time for Parliament to exert its will and rein this poison in. To be very clear to every colleague here, the Supreme Court has been clear that the people of Canada who are concerned by crimes committed by non-citizens have every right, through their elected representatives, to provide guidance to sentencing judges. And that is exactly what this simple, common-sense, nonpartisan bill does. Just this morning, the Globe and Mail editorial board said that judges in our current system are protecting non-citizens from the consequences of their criminal conduct, lamenting that no one seems to consider whether Canadians would want these offenders as citizens in the first place. This is the Globe and Mail. While it's tempting to blame judges for the state of affairs, the fault lies with the federal government, who, in spite of the increased evidence of leniency in sentencing due to consideration of immigration status in recent years, have declined to provide more clarity to judges through legislation. This is why I introduced this bill, to amend the criminal code and rectify this issue. The rationale for this change is straightforward. Anyone seeking residence or citizenship in Canada, as I said, has responsibility as well as rights. The Citizenship Guide clearly states that citizens must obey Canada's laws and respect the rights and freedoms of others. And IRPA outlines the potential consequences for non-citizens who fail to do so. A non-citizen in Canada should accept individual responsibility for defending the democratic institutions of Canada's constitutional monarchy, which is an ordered liberty rooted in the principles of peace, order, and good government. In practice, this means they will defend shared Canadian rights like freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of speech, of the press, freedom of peaceful assembly, freedom of association, and the equality of women and men. All Canadians and those seeking to become one are expected to abandon any violent, extreme, or hateful prejudices and to contribute to Canada. And they are expected to respect the rule of law and accept the consequences for not doing so. Without legislative clarity on considering immigration status in sentencing, judges can apply aspects of the Pham ruling to undermine the principle that non-citizens, that principle for non-citizens, effectively end running the deportation consequences already enacted by Parliament that exist in IRPA. To those who would say that this bill offends the principle of judicial independence, I want to make it clear that it is entirely appropriate for Parliament to offer guidelines to the courts on sentencing. Section 718 already does this in countless ways, but I will highlight 4 examples. 1. The very beginning of Section 718 in the Criminal Code states in part that the fundamental purpose of sentencing is respect for the law. I would argue that Canadians lose respect for the law when it is not applied equally, and it has not been done in the case of non-citizens convicted of serious crimes like sexual assault. 2, Section 718(1) states that a sentence must be proportionate to the gravity of the offence and the degree of responsibility of the offender. I would assert that at no point has Parliament intended to say that the responsibility of the offender is reduced because of their immigration status. To suggest otherwise is to remove agency from an individual just because they were born in a different country, and that's wrong. 3, Section 718(2) lists the following as an aggravating factor for the purposes of sentencing: evidence that the offence had a significant impact on the victim considering their age and other personal circumstances, including their health and financial situation. Many of the cases I highlighted tonight involve sexual assaults which obviously have a significant impact on the victim and disproportionately impact women. Our bill will seek to reestablish this general sentencing principle that has too often been ignored. And finally, Section 718(2) states that a sentence should be similar to if sentences imposed on other offenders for similar offenses committed in similar circumstances, obviously giving the offender a lighter sentence just because of their immigration status offends this principle. It is well within Parliament's purview to reassert this general sentencing principle by further clarifying for judges that they should not take into account an offender's immigration status. And in my closing remarks, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank Sean Phelan, an unsung hero in Canadian history. A lot of people won't know this name, but he has single-handedly worked to reform Canada's justice system over the last 10 years, and I thank him for his help in this bill tonight. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll have a bit of time to expand on some thoughts shortly, but I do have a question for the member. You know, the reference that she always makes to is sexual offences. There are many different types of offences that a person can commit. You know, I've had opportunity to have to tour quite a while ago prison sites where gambling addictions leads to a lot of types of crimes that ultimately have a person go to jail. It's just not sexual offences. I just mentioned that to the member, and I'll expand on that shortly. But my question for her is, does she have any genuine confidence in judicial independence?
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I outlined in my speech why my bill upholds the principle of judicial independence. And it also outlines how the FAM decision actually intended for the courts not to do exactly what they're doing right now, which is to avert the will of Parliament that has already been exerted in IRPA, which clearly states that a non-citizen convicted of a serious crime should be deported. And my colleague is introducing this principle that somehow a crime like fraud or drug trafficking or other offenses, if somebody reaches the threshold of serious criminality in IRPA, they should be deported. They should be, and he laughed. He laughed at this, and this is what's wrong with for everybody watching at home, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals laughed at that principle that undermines, it underpins Canadian citizenship. Ha ha! If you commit a serious crime, you should stay here if you're a non-citizen. It's garbage.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Member for Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for that very knowledgeable speech. I have a tough time keeping up with it. It's a very complicated subject, but the premise of it is pretty basic in terms of the crimes being committed. Now we hear Liberals trying to equate sexual crimes with gambling crimes. There's a specific victim when you're talking about women and children being victims of sexual crimes.
That's right.
And I don't want to leave this House with the idea that we should be diluting this just because of a status of an immigrant. So I'd like to ask a colleague, when we're talking about the victims, can she elaborate that in terms of the victims, especially when we're talking about murder and missing women and violence against women that the Liberals profess to stand up for?
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
So I'll speak to two provisions briefly. In the Criminal Code already, the Criminal Code states that sentencing needs to consider the impact on a victim. So my colleague is absolutely right. But also in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, it also clearly states that somebody who is a non-citizen who has been convicted of a serious crime, any serious crime, because there is a victim in any crime, especially serious ones, they should be deported. What has happened through the FAM decision is that activist judges have perverted the original ruling and subverted the will of Parliament and proliferated a set of leniencies for non-citizens convicted of serious crimes, like sexual assault, and undermined public confidence in both the justice system and the immigration system. That is no way to uphold a pluralism. In fact, that is how a pluralism will fall apart, and maybe that's what the Liberals want. After a decade of post-nationalism saying that there's no national identity and eroding the rule of law, that's where we're at. They need to support this bill.
Question et commentaire. The Honourable Member for Peace River Westlock.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for bringing this bill forward. It's a great bill. I'm wondering if she can just outline, we've heard in the past about stories of judges actually reducing the sentence so that that particular peoples don't get deported. This, to me, totally seems like a way of reducing the value of Canadian citizenship. I'm wondering if she can comment about that.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill, and she'll have 55 seconds to respond.
This is why this bill is so important. In order to preserve the value of Canadian citizenship, we need to understand that there are responsibilities associated with being in Canada, not just privileges, not just benefits, right? In order to have those privileges and benefits, there are responsibilities. And a bare minimum, as outlined in the Immigration Protection Act already, is to not get convicted of a serious crime. IRPA says that if you are a non-citizen and you are convicted of a serious crime, you should be deported. And I'm sorry, the will of Parliament needs to be supreme. I'm actually not sorry, to be clear. Parliament needs to assert its will, rein in these activist judges, and do what the federal government has not done, which is let them run amok for a decade and let them undermine the value of Canadian citizenship, not seek restitution for victims, and also make it unfair for every immigrant who comes here who plays by the rules, who is most immigrants. This is a no-brainer bill. Every week there is a story of one of these. And every week, if the government does...
I have to interrupt the honourable member.
I'll start with questions to Mr. Parton. Mr. Parton, in early September of this year, you were cited in a news article where you gave a quote that said, "You bring TFWs in for 50% wage and outbid employers who have been supporting apprenticeships, investing in Canadians to train the next generation of construction workers. You lose out on the bid because you're not competitive anymore." So this committee often hears testimony that we need to sustain the high levels of immigration that Canada has seen over the last several years. But I find that incongruent with data that shows that we have a serious youth jobs crisis. Can you expand on the statement that you made and talk about why it is important to scrap the TFW program and perhaps why it's more important to be training Canadian youth and looking at productivity measures within and incenting productivity measures within industry rather than relying on immigration to address some of these gaps?
Well, it is, yeah, absolutely. So when I said, $10.44, that's ERSD's model or wage that they think an iron worker's worth. Certainly in our union, it's upwards of probably it's in the 50%, 45 to 50% higher wage bracket. I would talk about in the last 12 months the work that my local's done, specifically in attracting young Canadians, young ladies, and young fellas to come in what we called boot camp, where they'd spend 2 to 3 weeks, kind of a pre-apprentice type, earn while you learn.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Albus, Mr. Albus, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ministers and officials, for your service to our great country. Minister McKinnon, Canadians are dying on the roads, and it seems that you're spending more time keeping your government safe than Canadians safe on the roads. What do you say to that criticism?
I haven't heard that criticism.
You just did.
Okay, well, what I can tell you is that I am a full-time Minister of Transportation. I spend an inordinate amount of time worrying about rail safety, road safety, air safety, and the multitude of issues, infrastructure issues, other issues. This issue, on which I was proud to collaborate with my colleague Ms. Haidu, with the labor program, with whom where I have a special acquaintance, and I was able to help orchestrate some of the improvements last spring that you saw in this issue. So a lot going on, Mr. Albus, and we look forward to more.
Actions speak louder than words, and the old saying is, if you don't have time, you give money. So what investments in road safety will be in the budget? And if you can't give concrete examples today, will you at least commit to putting a firewall around any cuts that you need to make to any safety program under your portfolio?
Well, I can assure you there'll be no compromise on safety ever. And I can tell you that I can point you to the $77 million that will be in the budget. Won't be in the budget if it does not pass, unfortunately, but will be in the budget that will make this vast improvement, we think, to the trucking regime in the country.
There's that House Leader role again. Minister, National Safety Code 16, the requirements for a Class 1 driver's license for extra-provincial driving right now is a recommendation. We have a patchwork system in this country with varying standards. Why is it not a law for extra-provincial? That's an area under your direct responsibility, sir.
We have a collaborative system in this country in terms of transportation. Some parts of it are exclusively provincial. In fact, you could argue that the heavy half of regulation of trucking is found at the provincial level. Certainly enforcement is found at the provincial level. And where we collaborate is nationally. So it's not necessarily, in many cases, a federal system, but a national system through the CCTMA or others where we collaborate and establish standards. And in all events,
Minister,
this needs to be a collaborative
certificate. A safety fitness certificate is set by you as the Minister of Transport through the Motor Vehicle Transportation Act. I hope you take this suggestion seriously. I'm going to pass on my time to Mr. Groleau, please. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
My question will be primarily focused on with respect to Minister Hajdu. First of all, I understand that Minister Freeland, former Minister Freeland, was quite popular amongst colleagues, and we've invited her, and she's yet to show up. So maybe you could mention the fact that we'd love to see her at Transportation Committee. Next up, I'm glad to see, in all seriousness, that there's some acknowledgement of the problem that's been created over the last 10 years. That there's finally been acknowledgement that over the last 10 years, the Liberal government has mismanaged the immigration system and the TFW system, and that they've mismanaged the CRA to the extent that both the misclassification and the TFW program have led to numerous fatalities on our highways. And I'm glad to see there's some acknowledgement of that. But what my concern is, over 10 years, we have seen this problem get worse and worse and worse. In fact, we saw the Insurance Bureau came and they told us that there's been 80% increases. There have been people died in my riding because of your government's failure to manage the TFW program and the classification of drivers. So I'm glad to see that there is an acknowledgement of that. But I want to dig down and see if we can get some results here. What is the date that the Drivers Inc. problem will cease to be an issue in Canada? Give me that date.
Well, I mean, first of all, look, as I said in my speech, this began with a deregulation that allowed for this practice to flourish. And so that actually happened under the Harper Conservatives in 2011. And over the years, the program, the process began to multiply. So we've actually, as of today, announced that we are reversing a moratorium on T4As. This is something that the Trucking Alliance is pleased with. Obviously there are lots of efforts to streamline doing business in this country, but sometimes we have to take a step back and realize that some regulations really matter, and this one evidently did. I would also say that the licensing and the training of truck drivers is firmly in the lands of provincial jurisdiction. And that's why this partnership with provinces and territories is so important, because we can't actually get to the infractions from a driving capacity licensing way without the provinces and territories.
According to the Insurance Bureau, we've seen an 80% increase in accidents in Ontario and 88% in Ontario or in Alberta. We've seen over 80% in Atlantic. This is a national problem. We would love to have some national leadership. So I'm going to ask you again, at what date will a Drivers Inc. issue cease to exist in Canada?
Well, I think we're actually getting somewhere, because what we have not only done is send a strong signal through the industry, but also crack down on individual companies, small, medium, and large, that have used
Minister,
this
we're
practice.
trying to schedule a meeting to have the victims here. Unfortunately, your party is filibustering that. They're unwilling to listen to the victims. The victims, it's cold comfort for them to hear that we're making
the
some
drivers that have been misused? Is that the
victims as well? They sure, absolutely, as well as those who have died on our highways. district because of your government's inability to properly classify drivers and to handle the TFW program in a sensible manner. They would find it very cold comfort to hear we might be making progress someday. At what date will the Drivers Inc. program cease to be an issue?
Well, we hope that it will cease to be an issue immediately, and that's the work that we're doing to invest in the tools that we need to catch these bad actors. And today's announcement goes a long way. Announcement goes a long way to sending a message throughout the industry that we are taking even further measures by sharing information back and forth between ESDC and CRA, by working with provinces and territories in a deep collaboration. I would say we all share this deep grief that you're talking about. I mean, we've all known people who have lost their lives. I live in Northern Ontario. Highway 1117 goes through my riding. In many places, only 2 lanes. We've invested $70 million towards doubling the lanes in my riding, and I expect that we work in partnership with provinces and territories to continue that work to make our roads safe. So it's an issue of infrastructure, it's an issue of investment, and it's an issue of cracking down on bad drivers. And we need the provinces for that, by the way, because if someone is licensed to drive in this country and they don't actually have the skills to drive, they're putting my son's life at danger, who is also, by the way, a licensed AZ driver, who is on the roads hauling equipment back and forth from job sites. So, you know, when you talk about victims, I really want you to know that we all share the grief and we all share the responsibility to push on our provinces and territories to do better on all of our behalfs in partnership with the work that we're doing today. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that I find it actually really distressing that we're going to weaponize grief in this room.
For 15 seconds here. Thank you. I share your grief, but we also have a duty and responsibility to these victims.
The additional time. I want to make sure that I don't disrespect Mr. Greaves. He has 5 minutes that I have to respect as well. But Mr. Lawrence, I will give you additional time if you want to go next time.
Oh, yeah.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to both the ministers for appearing this morning. First to you, Minister McKinnon, just in your testimony, and notwithstanding the fact that I agree with you that our grocery shelves are full of goods because of transport, our truckers, I'm also going to equally say that probably because Canadians can't afford food. But that's just a point of interest. Minister, on October 7, 2025, this committee heard compelling testimony from witnesses who described the Driver Inc. model as, quote, the crisis that is destroying the trucking industry, causing carnage on our highways and robbing our social network of billions of dollars each year. Minister, just honestly, yes or no questions, please. In your capacity as Minister of Transport, have you met with the Ontario Minister of Transportation about this crisis?
Mr. Sarkaria and I have communicated back and forth, and our offices have. We will continue to obviously collaborate with Ontario. We have, as you can imagine, a number of major issues with Ontario that we want to solve together, and we'll do that. But I visited your riding. I visited the greenhouses in your riding. I visited the temporary foreign workers who work in the greenhouses in your riding, and the owners of those greenhouses who say that they could not possibly survive without those temporary foreign workers. And I just want to ask you, though, Mr. Lewis.
I had a very, very brief question.
I want to ask you, Mr. Lewis, do you approve of the stereotyping of temporary foreign workers that your colleagues just went through?
Minister, have you had any discussions?
It's an honest question for you.
Have you had any discussions? It's my floor. Thank you, Minister.
In your part of the world, you produce food.
Mr. Chair, colleagues, if I could just ask everybody
you're a breadbasket
one at
for
a time,
Canada, Mr.
just
Lewis.
for the benefit of our interpreters who are having a very hard time trying to figure out what to translate.
Minister, have you had any discussions with Felix Fung?
So I'm going to add 15 seconds.
Thank you very much. Minister, have you had any discussions with Felix Fung, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Transportation on the CCMTA regarding this crisis?
Well, I just want to finish off on my earlier
I would must ask you questions, yes or no?
Sometimes
Please,
you got to
Minister,
take a stand.
yes or no?
Sometimes you got to take a stand, Mr. Lewis.
I'm taking a stand right now. Just yes or no?
Do you approve of
so
your
the answer
colleagues?
is no. Have you met with any of the boards of directors from CCTMA about this crisis?
Do you approve of your colleagues' stereotyping of temporary foreign workers who are vital to the employment base in your riding and to feeding Canadians?
So the answer is no. Okay. Thank you for that, Minister. So let's talk about my riding of Essex. And quite frankly, I know about the bread basket of Essex. You don't need to remind me. And thank goodness for those greenhouses, because they certainly put a lot of food on Canadians' table, but also on Americans' tables as well. And because of the price of food, thank goodness that they do that. My riding of Essex is next to the busiest international border crossing in North America. And earlier this year, a truck driver lost its load on County Road 42 and Banwell Road in my riding of Essex. But because you visited it, you must know exactly where it's at. There were tons and tons and tons of safety violations. Minister, what does Standard 16 mean?
I assume that you've spoken to Mr. Sarkaria about those safety violations.
What does Standard 16 mean,
and
Minister?
So that he can talk to his colleagues in law enforcement.
So what does Standard 16 mean? Do you know?
Well, the first thing, if you're interested in solving the problem, Mr. Lewis, I suggest that Mr. Sarkaria,
So Standard 16,
perhaps I could introduce
Thank you, sir. So you don't know.
Mr. Sarkaria and I will talk to you about law enforcement on those highways that I've been down. I've visited those greenhouses. I've talked to those workers. I've seen those packaging plants. We're very proud of that industry in Canada.
As you should be.
That is an incredible industry
So
with
Standard
incredible
16,
entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Minister. So Standard 16, let me just read it for you, means entry-level training class 1. What drivers must be trained in, like vehicle inspection and driving practices. Now, at least you're aware. Last question. How much time, Mr. Chair?
You have 1 minute left, sir.
Thank you very much. My next question is for Minister
Mr.
Hadjiu.
Lewis, you agree that driver certification is a provincial responsibility? Surely.
Well, I would suggest that because it's interprovincial, which is why my next question is for Minister Hadjiu.
Would you like us to federalize that issue? As Mr. Sarkaria
and by the way,
signed
and
off on
I've
that?
heard you speak about Highway 11 and Highway 17, and I know that area very, very well. I spend a lot of time up in that area. Minister, we had some testimony back a couple of weeks ago. Just got to find my note here, Minister. There we go. On October 7th, one witness, Johan Couture, Executive Director of the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, testified before a committee. I don't feel safe. I don't want to use routes 11 and 17. In light of this testimony and similar concerns raised by other women who appeared before this committee, do you have a response you would like to share with Ms. Couture and the woman who expressed fear for their safety on these routes?
Well, I would echo that fear. I'm driving down that road this weekend for an event in my very large riding, and I will tell you I'm very glad that there's no snow on the road, and there are times where, as a member of Parliament, I actually cancel visits to small communities in my riding because 1117 is the only route in, and there are portions of that road that are extremely treacherous. Now, the good news is that Ontario and Canada have invested in widening the road and increasing lanes, and in those parts, the safety obviously has increased. But that work has to continue, and I would suggest that, you know, the federal government can be a strong partner in those infrastructure priorities that provinces are setting, not just obviously for safety, which I think should be our primary concern, but also for the economy of our country. And you will know, having traveled those roads, that actually there are ports that road that if it shuts down the trade for the entire country.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister.
In fact, it was,
I just want to make sure I give the final slot to Mr. Kello.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell is going on here? We're gonna get a full dose of the skank. Patty Hadjiu was rotten.
Alors, honorables sénateurs, nous accueillons aujourd'hui l'honorable Patty Hadjiu. Haidou, merci, pardon. CP, député, ministre de l'Emploi et des Familles et ministre responsable de l'Agence fédérale de développement économique pour le Nord de l'Ontario pour la période des questions afin de répondre à des questions concernant ses compétences ministérielles. Au nom de tous les sénateurs, je vous souhaite la plus cordiale bienvenue. And Minister, as I have noted to the Senate, a main question is limited to 1 minute and your response to 1 minute and 30 seconds. And the question and answer for a supplementary question are both limited to 45 seconds. And the reading clerk stands 10 seconds before these times expire. And I ask everyone to please respect these times, and question period will last 64 minutes. Senator Houssakos.
Minister, welcome to the Senate. Minister, families across Canada are experiencing the worst affordability crisis in a generation. Despite the rosy picture painted by your government's photo ops and the government leaders' constant claims here in the Senate, an average family of 4 is projected to face a $1,000 increase in grocery costs next year. Food bank usage has reached a record high of 2.2 million visits per month, double what it was just 6 years ago. Affordable housing remains a distant dream for most Canadians, and household debt has climbed to a record 180%, the highest in the G7. Minister, after a decade of Liberal government, why does life continue to become more expensive for Canadian families?
Madame la Ministre.
Well, thank you very much, Senators. And first, let me just say what a pleasure it is to be with all of you. And Madam Speaker, thank you so much for the invitation to come to question period. I would like to start by saying that this government has been very focused on supporting people who are struggling, whether it is ensuring that benefits like the Canada Child Benefit, Old Age Security, GIS are indexed to inflation, or through innovative programs like the Canada Dental Care Plan that's providing dental care treatment for some of the lowest income Canadians across this country, or historically, whether it's through early learning and childcare, which in Ontario, on average, families are seeing a savings of $10,400 a year. This government is focused on doing things for and with communities and families and provinces and territories that we know actually is improving things for families. I'm especially proud of the school food program, which supports provinces and territories to ensure that kids get a healthy meal at school. And I was recently in a school called St. Edward's in Nipigon, Ontario, in my riding, a very small community, where it was obvious that teachers, volunteers were so proud of the work they were doing to support their students, and the students themselves were so happy to gather around a meal and start their day with a full belly. So there are things we can control, Madam Speaker, and there are things we cannot. We are focused as a government on supporting
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Senator Houssakos.
Minister, no amount of photo ops and no amount of litany of programs that you have in place that are there to get things better are going to change the fact that Canadians are facing food insecurity, job insecurity, risking costs, and disbelief. At this point, there's a complete disbelief that the government is actually solving the problem. We're looking at the numbers of people going into food banks, people that can't buy a house. It's getting worse every year over the last 10 years. It's not getting better. When will your government acknowledge the strain Canadians are facing and change the methodology so we can get a different result?
Madame la Ministre.
Thank you very much. And although Conservative colleagues in the House of Commons continually report food bank statistics, they also fail to report one of the main drivers of the increasing crisis of food affordability, and that's climate change. In fact, report after report talks about climate change deeply impacting the cost of groceries, whether it's beef or vegetables or fruit, imports, and food grown here in Canada. And although there are things we cannot control about the price of food, what we can control is supporting families who are struggling. And that's why we continue to focus on things that help families, including early learning and childcare, which Kendra in Saskatchewan said allowed their family to send both their young children to daycare, enabling parents to grow their small businesses.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Sénatrice Poirier.
Minister, thank you for being here. My question is on the Auditor General's report on daycare. While cost has gone down unevenly through Canada, the Auditor General still highlighted the increased difficulty for families to access childcare in 2023 compared to 2020. It also highlighted that by next March, the government will probably not meet its goal of increasing the number of regulated spaces by the 250,000 over the 5 years. What was also disappointing is the lack of reporting on your government for the $35 billion spent. Minister, while spaces are still lacking and more than 4 years behind on reporting to the public on national progress, how can Parliament and Canadians have confidence that the $35 million is well spent?
Madam Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I have quote after quote of families who are talking about the incredible savings that they're seeing as parents with their children in affordable childcare. And I could certainly read those to you. However, I will say that we were recently together, Minister Calandra and I, just last week, or maybe it was this week, recently in the last few days, signing the extension to Ontario's childcare agreement. This provides Ontario with another $695 million to create 86,000 spaces by 2026. But what was interesting is Minister Calandra agreed with the Auditor General and said that, in fact, our negotiations had been quite fierce and that they were prepared to up their game in terms of providing the data that the federal government needs to be able to assess these programs that are national in nature. And you will all appreciate that provincial governments have control over their data systems, and this is a work in collaboration with provinces and territories. There are many spaces where this is equally frustrating for federal ministers. I was the Minister of Health. It was very difficult to get health data during COVID. I've been the Minister of Labour, and I am again, and I can tell you it can be challenging to get data in terms of outcomes for money that we spend on skills training. But I think all parties are heeding the Auditor General's request in the space of early learning and childcare, and we will continue to do that work with our counterparts provincially.
Senatrice Poirier.
Minister, Calgary Herald headlines in September was the following: shortage of daycare spaces in downtown Calgary poses challenges for working parents. The Winnipeg Free Press in August, Manitoba well short of spaces promised under the National Daycare Program. And Mississauga in October, parents scrambled to find after-school care. And last month, the Telegram reported that there simply isn't enough childcare spaces in Atlantic Canada. So from coast to coast to coast, one clear message: we need more spaces. So, Minister, after spending $35 billion and still lacking spaces, what do you say to the thousands of parents who are still on the wait list and cannot afford a daycare spot?
Madame la Ministre.
Thank you very much. Well, what I say to parents is that we commit to continuing to grow those spots, and it's investments not only in the operations cost of childcare, but we've also supported provinces and territories with the physical infrastructure costs of creating physically new spots. And finally, some provinces are limited in terms of being able to open up those spots because they do not have enough trained early learning and childcare experts to be able to staff those spots. And so we've also supported provinces in recruiting and training ELCC's learning care experts so that they can be there ready and waiting for those children. And I would say that it's encouraging to hear you speak favorably about childcare, and I will share that with our colleagues in the House, particularly the Conservative members of Parliament.
Senator Mohammed.
Minister, just over here to your left. Keep going. There you go. Minister, we know that federal programs like the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy provide valuable short-term job opportunities. However, the data remains worrying. The number of youth not in employment, education, or training, otherwise known as NEET, is increasing, and youth unemployment remains structurally high. Simultaneously, businesses across the country are reporting a severe skills mismatch, struggling to fill hundreds of thousands of critical, high-paying jobs in the trades, technology, and healthcare. This suggests that simply increasing short-term placements is not building the career foundation young Canadians or businesses need or want. Minister, beyond the successful but temporary Canada Summer Jobs model, what national, long-term economic strategy will your department implement to address the country's high-demand sectors while ensuring that young Canadians are not just getting a job, but they are getting sustainable career pathway across every region of Canada?
Madam Minister.
Well, thank you very much for that question. And I would say, Madam Speaker, that it is incredibly relevant that the Senator speaks about data. And yet again, the challenge of provincial data not matching up with federal data and the data gaps that we continue to experience, which is why the Prime Minister's announcement during part of a tariff announcement was to create sector alliances. And sector alliances is, I would say, somewhat of a boring name for a very exciting concept. And what it does is it brings provinces and territories together with trainers, with unions, with colleges and universities.
This is their only option for feeding their kids. And your government just keeps saying, we're giving all this money. Why can't families figure this out? Well, this is a failure on your government, period.
Well, actually, in fact, one of your members of Parliament derided our socialist programs just the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Woo, this one is going to get heated, guys. Points of order, all the fun stuff. Lila Goodridge is on the edge of snapping on Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu, maybe because she's a despicable troll. Before we get to Lila Goodridge, we're going to check out MP Rosemary Falk, who nails Patty Hajdu. It takes her a minute to get heated up, but once it starts, this one is crazy to watch. Enjoy this. Let's take a peek. Patty Hajdu's got to go.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Thank you, Minister, for making time to be here today. All families deserve equal access to parental leave, but adoptive and intended parents remain at a disadvantage under our current EI system. In the previous Parliament, I introduced a private member's bill to create a new 15-week attachment benefit that would deliver parity for adoptive and intended parents. It is also recognized the importance of securing early attachments and the role that support plays in healthy long-term outcomes. As you know, my bill did not receive the royal recommendation it needed to proceed. Instead, your government introduced its own version of the bill, copied in principle, but with one critical difference. It would only come into force on an order in council. So despite that, the measure received unanimous support in the House, and Bill C-59 received royal assent on June 20th of 2024. However, it's now almost a year and a half later, 17 months, and parents are still waiting for this benefit to be rolled out. Parental leaves have come and gone, and in the meantime, with families continuing to miss out on these important additional weeks with their kids, and Parliament unanimously agreed that they should have this. Time is a precious commodity for any new family, so adoptive and intended parents simply want the time they deserve with their children. Minister, on what exact date will adoptive and intended parents finally receive the equal access to the leave that Parliament had promised them?
Well, thank you very much, for that question, but also for the advocacy for adoptive and intended parents. I've just been consulting with my deputy. That work is underway right now. I don't have an exact date for you, but I look forward to continuing our work together.
What concrete steps have been taken in the rollout of this benefit?
So the work is happening with the department to plan for that benefit, and I hope that when it appears in a budget forthcoming, that you will vote for it. In fact, your party has a
if you can't
record
provide a
of
date
voting
today,
against
can you
the measures
please
that
tell
you
me when you
advocate
can
for.
provide a date that this will be rolled out?
We'll certainly be.
It's been 17 months.
We'll certainly
we
be
did
working.
the work. I did the work. My office has done the work on this.
Sorry, we have a point of order. Come on.
Sorry, I think it's very hard for the interpreters when the minister or when the speaker is being cut out and there's two people speaking at the same time.
Thank you. I would remind all members to be conscious of the interpretation. Ms. Falk, you have the floor.
So we did the work for this. We had an end date that it would come into force. Your government copied the bill in the principle and then failed to deliver it. So your government had misled adoptive and intended families that this was going to happen, and it hasn't happened, and you can't provide me a date of when this is going to happen. That's unacceptable. When is the date that intended families and adoptive families can expect this?
If you're interested in continuing this work together, you have my commitment that we'll include you in the work.
But that's, Minister, I can't say that is a true statement. Your party voted against this bill when I brought it forward. Your party refused to provide the royal recommendation that was needed for this bill to proceed. And then you copied the bill in principle and have not implemented in 17 months. Some of these children are now almost 2 years old. It's completely unacceptable. When is the date that this will come into effect?
A member would know that private members' bills that require the government to spend money are usually not adopted. Whether it's from a Conservative member or from a member of Parliament from the Liberal government.
You don't
so
have
your
a date.
question is a bit disingenuous, Member of Parliament. I will say this, though. I've just made the commitment to you that the government intends to uphold its commitment and that we will work with you.
I'm moving on to another question. Does your department have an internal timeline that it is using to guide the implementation?
Department is at work right now on looking
at...
So
more than 17 months then?
I certainly will ensure that you're kept abreast of this work, MP.
With all due respect, Minister, this isn't an entirely new program that is being developed This is literally mirroring the maternity benefit that women who birth a child receive. And adopted and intended parents already contribute to the EI system. They already have access to the EI parental benefit. And adding an additional 15-week category should not require months, and in this case, almost years of delay. So, Minister, if this issue is not political, can you just be honest with the families that are still waiting as of why they are still waiting, if this is not a political issue?
I look forward to your support when we do introduce this, whether it's in a budget or another measure, and I certainly hope your party will vote for it.
It was in the fall economic statement in 2024. That was a long time ago, and there's been no movement on this whatsoever. I think that's absolutely unacceptable. Would you not agree that that's unacceptable?
I have made the commitment to you, I think repeatedly now, that we'll make sure your office is included in this work.
Okay, thank you.
The moment we've all been waiting for, Lila Goodridge is right on the edge of going nuts on Patty Hajdu. And you'll see why. Patty Hajdu is obnoxious, arrogant, and a straight-up fraud. Let's check out the hack minister battling a real emotional MP. Let's go.
So since 2017, baby formula has risen 84% in Canada, according to StatsCan, and yet, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's risen by only 42.9%. Why is the inflation on this product double in Canada, and does that concern you?
It does concern me. It does concern me when a product like baby formula, which is not easily replaceable, is that expensive. And we've had a number of exchanges in the House. Obviously, there are things that the government can control. There are things that the government cannot. One thing we can control, though, is increasing available money for individuals who are needing to purchase baby formula.
Has this been discussed at Cabinet?
In fact, Health Canada has actually made some regulatory changes to make it easier to get baby formula into this country, and I would encourage you
I'm
to
well
ask
aware.
the
I
minister.
actually advocated for that when we were dealing with the formula shortage before. And what I have seen from this government, from the last government, for the last 10 years is no action, no real care. We are in a crisis. Parents are paying $50 for a container of baby formula. In 2020, that exact same container of baby formula cost $29. The amount that your government is providing to families has not gone up by that percentage. So you can't continue saying, oh, but we're giving all this money to families. We need to deal with the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is food is too expensive, and baby formula is not replaceable for families that rely on it. It is absolutely irreplaceable.
So, Mr. Chair, in fact, the Canada Child Benefit, which your party has voted against any increase since 2016, has kept up with inflation. It is one measure that has deeply alleviated poverty for children in this country. In fact, between 2015 and now, 2019 actually, child poverty rates declined by 42%, and we continue to see an alleviation of poverty through a number of measures. You have an opportunity, Member of Parliament, to stop fighting against families. Families know that there are challenges. With all due respect,
Minister, 84% increase in 8 years on baby formula, that is far, far higher than CPI. So no, you have not done what you need to do. And the real problem is that we are reliant on imports for baby formula in Canada, massively, massive imports. It took Health Canada months to get their act together to allow us to import baby formula from Europe when we were in crisis. Families were scraping by. There are families right now that are buying baby formula in open tubs because that is the cheapest way for them to do this. I've had families contact me saying that they are buying what they know is stolen formula. Baby formula is one of the #1 stolen food items. It is kept under lock and key in Canada.
And against the increases to Canada Child Benefit, against the kinds of things like early learning and child care.
Because they're not working.
As we pointed out.
If they were working, 1 in 3 kids would not be the clients at food banks.
In fact, if they're not working, their Canada Child Benefit is actually even higher. So for 0 to 3, those children would be receiving up to $7,000 or more a year in Canada Child Benefit, and yet indexed to inflation, and you vote against it time and again. So I'm just curious why you think that extra money wouldn't be helpful to a family that you're describing.
What I am saying to you, Minister, is the inflation on baby formula, because your guys' government has refused to do any real action to make anything better on this file. And when I ask about this in the House of Commons, do you know what I get? School food program. Babies don't go to school. Families that rely on this do not have another option. There are countless families, whether they're adoptive, whether they can't breastfeed for some reason or they choose not to. This is their only option for feeding their kids. And your government just keeps saying, we're giving all this money. Why can't families figure this out?
Well,
this is a failure on your government, period.
Well, actually, in fact, one of your members of parliament derided our socialist programs just the other day to talk when we were talking about things like the Canada Child Benefit. We understand that the school
Minister,
food
when you
program
go
doesn't.
to other places. No, that's not a point of order.
Appel au
I make
règlement.
those
Vous parlez
decisions,
en même
Ms.
temps.
Goodrich.
Trop d'interruptions, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur le Président.
So, continue. I would ask all members to please respect the translators who have to translate your comments.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Kennedy and Looney. We have Patty Hajdu coming up. Like, she is one of the more repulsive ministers from Carney's cabinet of conspiracy and carnage. But she's going to be here on CBC. At least we don't have David Cochrane. We've got some other Phil Seat, like fake hack reporter sitting in the chair. Let's see how this goes. Like, they're just going to lie to you. Like, guaranteed. That's all they do on CBC, and with especially the Liberal ministers. They just try to deceive you. Let's take a look at how they're going to try to pull that off tonight. Don't let them fool you.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Canada is bracing for another economic attack from U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump said this week he's raising tariffs on Canada by an additional 10%, but still hasn't said when or how he'll do that. In light of all the uncertainty, the Carney government once again turned to its plan for the home front.
But here's the good news. We can do more for ourselves than any other nation can take away. We're going to focus on what we can control, building on our strength here at home. We're going to build big, build bold, and build now, shovels in the ground.
Among the pre-budget announcements today are $75 million for union apprenticeship training to boost workers in trades, $97 million for speeding up the recognition of workers' foreign credentials, a $1.5 billion tax credit for personal support workers in most provinces of up to $1,100. A lot of that money comes from a previous Liberal fund, but $304 million of it is brand new spending. Patty Hajdu is the Minister of Jobs and Families. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here.
I want to get to today's announcement, but sort of overlaying it as the news of the weekend, Trump saying he's going to raise tariffs another 10%. We don't know when or if CUSMA trade is going to be exempt to that. What further supports need to be put in place for Canadian workers and Canadian industry as we navigate this latest obstacle in the trade road?
Well, that's the work that we've been doing over the last several months, both preparing the workforce for any unanticipated shock or any kind of change in the labor market, specific sectors that are hard hit, making sure there's flexibility in the EI system to both keep workers attached through work sharing, but also make sure workers can get training while they're on the job. And obviously the investments in major projects in Build Canada Homes are a huge piece to trying to stimulate Canadian economy and build the things that we need to trade with other partners.
I think the frustration, and I've heard it this morning, right? Like I'm always reaching out to businesses across the country, to workers, to workers associations, business associations, and there's a concern that Trump's saying it's going to be, quote, a long time before he meets Carney. Carney's saying, Canada stands ready, but no real movement on either side. Is there a plan to get back to the table beyond just waiting?
Well, look, I think two things can be true. We are working diligently on trying to get a new deal with the United States to make sure that we can actually move forward with trading with the United States. But I think the entire world knows this is an uncertain time for trade, and global trade has been upended. We're not the only country to be living through a variety of different tariff measures. The challenge is that we are one of the largest trading partners with the United States. And so while we're doing that work to stabilize that relationship, the Prime Minister is also not waiting. He is forging new relationships. So he's today, as you know, at APEC, he is meeting with other Asian country leaders to both promote Canadian goods and services and people, sell the products that Canada actually produces, and ensure that we have options for diversification of trade.
Given
Now, this is going to shock you. What the Liberals are trying to do is ram through their censorship bill, C9. This is their so-called anti-hate bill, which the Minister of Justice admits will allow people to be criminally prosecuted for what they post online, bringing in UK-style tweet policing to Canada. The Liberals just want us to wave this through. They want us to give them a rubber stamp, a green light to make this law as quickly as possible, even though we have not had the opportunity to do the proper scrutiny of this bill that parliamentarians are supposed to be able to do.
Ms. Dillon has been very disrespectful to our guests
I'm not.
by suggesting
You have been disrespectful.
that they are
Your whole
not
Conservative
sophisticated enough
caucus
to
right here has
understand how
been very
parliamentary committees work.
Point of order? Yes. I'd just like to point out that we have, and Mr. Lawton, what he's been going on about, and the Conservative filibuster continuing. I'd like to point out we have members of the very communities he is talking about who are sitting in the audience wanting this bill to go
Chair, I have a
forward.
point of order.
There are
This is not a
officials
point of
here
order.
who are
But it's
ready
not a point
to
of
help
order.
us proceed with clause by clause.
It's not a
and
point of order.
everything he's
I can't
saying.
determine whether it's a point of order if I can't hear it, can I? Garnet?
But
so just park it for a second and I'll get to you.
I think the folks in the audience are very sophisticated people.
Yeah,
I
you were
think
sitting in
they
the back.
have
You
been
don't
in
know.
parliamentary committees before.
You were sitting in the back. You
Mr. Chair,
chatting.
you chastened me for speaking during her point of order.
You still kept
you will
talking,
now
though.
chasten
So me
her
too, I'm
for,
going to do the same thing
Ms.
now.
Dillon.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Oh, yeah.
What I do not support, and no Canadian who values freedom of expression could ever say they support this, is trying to cast a wider net on political expression that may be offensive, but is also what freedom of expression means. Again, freedom of expression does not exist for the benign. It does not exist for things that are not controversial. Freedom of expression protections exist precisely for things that are. And I look at how we have changed, how society has changed on so many social norms. There was a time when Tommy Douglas, who is a lion of socialism in Canada, a lion of the New Democrats, said in a prime ministerial debate that homosexuality was a mental illness. And that was a progressive view at the time. And now we have a situation in which we all realize the importance of equal rights for people of all sexual orientations. And this is something that shows how what is controversial in one era is a norm in another. And we only get there when we have the ability to engage in debate and discussion. And again, courts have reversed themselves as well. I mentioned Beverly McLaughlin. It was, about 30 years ago or so that the Supreme Court ruled there was no right to die by maid. And then you fast forward from the Rodriguez decision to the Carter decision, and the court has a different view because norms change over time. So we should not be stymieing debate and discussion when that is arguably the most important freedom and liberty that we have in this country. Where we go from there is that if we do not take a stand now, an unequivocal stand, and draw our line in the sand and defend freedom of expression, we are going to allow a government that has shown a reckless disregard for civil liberties to offer more unchecked power. These erosions happen gradually, but they are very difficult to reclaim. And I note what was argued by Christine Van Geyn of the Canadian Constitution Foundation, which I mentioned her testimony earlier, but it isn't just that more people will be charged under Section 319 or potentially under the Canadian Human Rights Act or potentially under the Canadian Labour Code. My colleague Mr. Baber has pointed this out, the incredible risk of applying this definition to all federal statutes. So that is in and of itself quite interesting. But again, this is not a case where we should ever put the power to government and just hope that they won't abuse it. I believe it was Maya Angelou who said, when people show you who they are, believe them. The Liberal government has showed us who they are time and time again, including with the Emergencies Act. And it's interesting when you look at artistic freedom, some of the most vocal critics of the Online Harms Act when it came up were people on the left. Margaret Atwood, who I put up there right with the BC Civil Liberties Association. I don't think anyone has ever confused Margaret Atwood with being a conservative. If she were ever to run for office, I do not believe I would be sitting anywhere near her on our side of the aisle. But Margaret Atwood, she understands a thing or two about authoritarianism. She wrote The Handmaid's Tale, a book which was adopted into a TV series, which I believe they filmed in Cambridge, which is the riding held by my colleague Connie Cody. And The Handmaid's Tale shows an extreme example of what happens when an authoritarian state expands its power. And as we saw in that, it did not happen immediately. It happened gradually. So we have to be very careful about things that look like they are inconsequential, things that look like they are benign, but actually are not. And I go to our point on
of order?
6.
Yes. I'd just like to point out that we have, and Mr. Lawton, what he's been going on about, and the conservative filibuster continuing. I'd like to point out we have members of the very communities he is talking about who are sitting in the audience wanting this bill to go forward. There are officials here who are ready to help us proceed with clause by clause.
It's not a
and
point of
everything
order.
he's
I can't
saying.
determine whether it's a point of order if I can't hear it, can I, Garnet? So just park it for a second, and I'll get to you, Ms. Dillon.
So out of respect for our audience members who are here wanting this bill to go forward, and they don't comprehend what is going on right now. It's a conservative filibuster to block the clause by clause so this bill can go forward. The very organizations and communities you mentioned, they're all in the audience. Look at you. They're all here, left their work, left whatever, to come and assist this committee to see this bill move forward. We have officials here who would like to see the clause by clause go forward. Please, if we can do that. I think this is going nowhere, what you're saying. You're just having circular reasoning. So can we move forward, please, with clause by clause?
Ms.
Thank you.
Dillon, and Mr. Genius, you'll have a point. If I don't answer, if my ruling is not what you think it should be, you can ask me to change that. Ms. Dillon, that's not a point of order technically. I do realize there are witnesses here that were here and came in to listen to clause by clause, and we should, as a committee, be respectful of that. But again, that's not, while your point was respectful, it's not a point of order. So. Mr. Genius, you want to say anything about that?
But, Chair, as you correctly said, it's not a point of order, but also Ms. Dillon has really insulted our guest.
Hey, I have a question. The front doors are locked here.
Yeah, what do you need?
I'm trying to get to the queer self-defense class.
Okay, around the corner.
So the south side of the building, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, and it said on the flyer, trans folks fight for free.
Yeah, you're trans.
I'm trans-indigenous.
You're what?
I'm trans-indigenous. My parents, bigoted doctor, assigned me white skin at birth, but I identify as a brown-skinned native.
Dude, get out of here.
Well, are you trans-native phobic?
No.
Well, then what's the problem?
Do you know how confusing this is to people and how you're making a mockery out of natives?
Well, that's ironic, don't you think?
No, we are protecting people here with self-defense.
And I want to participate.
No.
I'm a native. Trans natives are natives, and this is our land.
Dude, I'm calling the cops.
Don't misindigenate me. I am not a dude.
Get out of here.
Why are you being trans-native phobic right now?
Please leave.
No. This is my land, and you're trespassing. You're cis-American, so how about you leave?
I need you to leave the property now.
No.
So what's divisive? What's divisive is a conservative government in Alberta signed up for the entire MOU. The entire MOU. The conservative government in the federal government, the Conservatives are trying to cherry pick, to divide. What they should be talking about is the entire MOU. That is what the government of Alberta signed up for, the entire MOU. It is what we have signed up for, the entire MOU. People can have issues with particular pieces, but we are supportive of the entire MOU.
You are supportive, but there are many of your other caucus members who are not supportive.
The caucus is supportive of the entire MOU.
The whole caucus is.
Yes.
The Conservative Party of Canada, in particular the leader of the Conservative Party, just doesn't get it.
No,
It's about building Canada strong Mr. Speaker. The budget is there, the support is there for Canadians. And while every Liberal member of Parliament and the Prime Minister is focused on building Canada strong, we get the Conservative Party solely focused on the party's best interest. It's time that they put Canadians' interests first, Mr. Speaker, and that means allowing legislation to pass.
That's right.
Bail reform legislation.
That's right.
Budget legislation.
That's right.
There's only one thing standing in the way of its passage. It's the Conservative Party of Canada and the leader of the Conservative Party. Get off their back ends and get to work.
All right, well,
some Canadian households, and it tends to be the better off households, do have quite a lot of money that they've saved because there hasn't been that much to do in the pandemic. And certainly it would be great if that money could go towards driving our recovery. And I want to make an offer now to all of your listeners. If people have ideas on how the government can act to help unlock that preloaded stimulus, I am very, very interested. Maybe, as Doug Porter was suggesting, it happens by itself. That's the best case scenario for me. But if people have ideas on how we can really, try to unleash that, and particularly some Canadian households.
I have here the record of a grant from the from Global Affairs Canada. It's a $3.8 million grant that went to the Lebanese Armed Forces Mountain Warfare Ski Soldier School last year. And the purpose of the grant, from my understanding of the text, is to build multi-gender occupancy at Lebanese Ski Soldier School. Canada is undergoing an affordability crisis. Food bank usage in my region of Waterloo has gone up 5 times over the last few years. I've had people at the doors tell me they're worried about paying their rent. Nobody under 35 can afford a house. Could you explain to hungry taxpayers why it would be a good use of their money to send $4 million to Lebanese Ski Soldier School for multi-gender occupancy?
I'm not aware of this particular agreement. I do think there's a lot of benefits that we could cite just in terms of why we actually provide money internationally. And perhaps I could just turn to my colleagues who could provide a little bit more detail just in terms of some of that rationale.
Yeah, thanks very much for your question. And supporting international development it's not about choosing between helping others and helping ourselves. It's really about recognizing that we live in this interconnected world where global stability, health, and prosperity directly affect Canadians. So we take the perspective that by addressing issues like poverty, like inequality and conflict in countries around the world, whether it's Global South or other countries where poverty exists or security challenges exist.
Once again, Canadians are finding out that this
Canada's international assistance directly supports Canadians' security, their prosperity, as well as their well-being.
I take your answer to be that multi-gender occupancy at Ski Soldiers.
Once again, Canadians are finding out that this Prime Minister is all sizzle and no steak. It turns out that his big pipeline announcement won't actually build a pipeline. He's going to have a meeting to set up a plan and then sign a piece of paper that talks about maybe one day putting shovels in the ground. And now he's handing a veto power to the NDP in British Columbia, allowing them to block the whole thing. The Prime Minister is in Ottawa, and we know that he's having trouble with his own caucus on this issue. And now he's ducking the only question that Canadians have. Was yesterday the start of a real pipeline or just the latest episode in Announce Now and Deliver Never?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite that member to get a ticket to Calgary tomorrow as well, and they could see why the Premier of Alberta thinks that things have never been so good in Canada.
For Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, that wasn't their answer yesterday. In fact, that isn't what the government said at all when they gave BC the veto in this House. Maybe they need to brush up on the Constitution because Section 92 explicitly gives them the power to build pipelines, whether David Eby likes it or not. He also got the legal authority from this House when they asked us to pass Bill C-5 to circumvent their own regulations. And the only thing holding them back now is the same gutless paralysis that kept our oil buried and Canadians with less money over the last 10 years. So instead of hiding behind the premiers, will he get up and announce that he's going to build a pipeline?
Okay, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Smash the like, hit subscribe. We work really hard on this channel about Canadian federal politics. In this video, we've got Deputy Conservative Leader Melissa Lantsman. She is a sharp ticket, very interesting to watch. Let's take a look. Melissa Lantzman always makes these great videos. Let's take a peek.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
There's a fantastic movie that I think should be on everybody's bucket list. It's called Brazil. It's a dystopian masterpiece. The state is depicted as a vast, self-perpetuating bureaucratic machine whose primary purpose is no longer to serve citizens, but to protect and expand itself. Every department exists mainly to justify its own budget, its own staff, and its own procedures. The film is a brilliant critique of modern governments that once they lose any external discipline, market forces, democratic accountability, or even basic outcomes, its only remaining survival strategy is continuous growth, more process, more forms, and more control until the entirety of society is suffocated by paperwork. Process and paperwork is not a byproduct. It is the product.
It being 4 p.m., the House will now proceed to the consideration of the Ways and Means motion.
When I sat there for an hour and 5 minutes listening to the finance minister read nearly the entire Liberal budget into the parliamentary record, I couldn't help but to think of the scene from Brazil. Every single part of this historic, quote, generational change just involved more government, a new department, a new regulatory process for the private sector to follow, and ultimately more centralized government control of the Canadian economy. We can argue with the billions in new spending, the tens of billions of new debt that you'll pay for, the zero mention of pipelines, or the zero efforts to rein in inflation. And believe me, I will. But frankly, I want to focus on something much more insidious than that. The Liberal tendency for central planning.
So that's part of, you don't answer, we answer that question with full information by doing the work, and that's what the referral to the major project office facilitates. Thank you.
Central planning, in a nutshell, is a system in which a small group of government officials claims power to control an entire nation's economy, deciding what will be produced in what quantity, by whom, and at what price, replacing the voluntary choices of millions of individuals with the compulsory orders of the state. It's the ultimate expression of government overreach, the belief that a handful of bureaucrats can successfully direct the lives of everyone else, when history shows us that they always fail. They only produce shortages and stagnation and the utter loss of ambition. What this budget screams is that Liberals want a government that will try to steer an entire economy from a windowless room in Ottawa, armed with spreadsheets and slogans and the dangerous belief that they know better than everyone else.
The Minister for Environment and Climate Change.
We're talking, Mr. Speaker, so I was sitting. I'm a Liberal.
True. Yeah, there's always a lot of that. A lot of people said they were going to move to Canada. Well, great. Good luck with that.
But now you're just America light?
Well, you're America communist.
Now.
Canada's nuts.
But now.
Oh, yeah. Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We've got the Joe Rogan Experience coming up here. Joe gets something wrong. He's been getting this one wrong, but he figures it out for himself on the show. I was glad to see this. It's always interesting to see him talk about Canada, because sometimes he knows exactly what he's talking about. Sometimes he has to figure it out. Let's take a look.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Exactly. That's true. But at least
now
they
you
left.
gotta move to a new place in England.
Hundreds of celebrities said they would leave and didn't.
That's true. Yeah, there's always a lot of that. A lot of people said they were going to move to Canada. Well, great. Good luck with that.
But now you're just America light?
Well, you're America communist.
Now.
Canada's nuts.
But now you're, like, still reliant on America.
I know, Sat, that I wanted to look up that I just read. I put this into perplexity. 1 out of 20 deaths last year, I read this article that was saying was assisted suicide. That can't be true. That can't be true.
Where'd you see it?
Because Keno Canada has an assisted suicide program, a national assisted suicide program. Yeah.
Could you imagine if there's some corruption in that? Holy crap.
There's corruption in everything,
right.
Jeff. Everything.
That's a
thing. There's corruption in religion. There's
sure.
Right? There's corruption in science. There's corruption in medicine.
Which becomes a great excuse to not be a part of those things, you know? Oh, I won't even question if I have a creator because there's fouled people in the church. You're like, that's so stupid.
Well, yeah.
It's accurate for Canada.
Wow. No,
in
of course not
20?
America.
I
Canada.
know, just, yeah.
It's Canada.
Yeah.
Let me see
That's
the
still a
numbers.
lot, isn't it?
Put those. Show the complexity. Look at this. This is crazy. Medical assistance in dying, known as MAID, also as known as assisted suicide or euthanasia, accounted for approximately 4.7% of all deaths in Canada.
That's wild.
That is so crazy.
How do we get more specific? Like, what would be an example of how?
We'll read into it. This proportion is equivalent to about 1 in 20 deaths across the country. That is so fucking insane. 1 out of 20 people who die in Canada are getting assisted suicide. How many of those people you could have given mushrooms to? They could have had an Ibogaine journey. Maybe they could have done something differently with their life to get them out of depression. How many of them could have gotten alternative medical treatments that have dealt with their condition? So what are the conditions? Did you put that in there, Jamie?
Average age of them is
77.
So that's
pretty old.
Yeah, that is old. But however, my mom's 80. She's great. Like what's going on?
Yeah.
She doesn't want to. Like what?
Like
what is it? Are you not just because you're 77? Are you not enjoying life, or is it 1 out of 20 people are dying of a terminal illness? And I am being short-sighted because they're like going to die soon anyway. They choose to die on their own. Is that the case?
Track 1 is natural death is reasonably foreseeable, and track 2 is not reasonably foreseeable for natural death.
Right. So track 2 recipients, this is where it gets weird because some of them were chronically obese. Some of them were chronically depressed. They were doing it for people that don't really have a disease. So what are the parameters? Let's put this, ask a follow-up. What do you have to have wrong with you to qualify for MAID in Canada? Let's just ask that.
How do you qualify for MAID?
Because if it's just you're depressed,
that's scary.
That's crazy.
Right, and very irresponsible. If you have cancer and they're trying to just like, I'm done with my fight, please help me.
Right.
Is what track 1 is,
That
but we're
makes
talking about
sense.
track 2.
Be at least 18 years old and capable of making healthcare decisions. Be eligible for publicly funded health service. Okay, that's normal. Voluntary request. Informed consent. Have a serious and incurable illness, disease, or disability causing, enduring, and intolerable suffering that cannot be alleviated under conditions acceptable to the person. But that's the key word, the key phrase there. Acceptable to the person is interesting. Be in an advanced state of irreversible decline in capability. Okay,
Still here.
Well, we're talking now. I can't talk. I don't know what year you're referring to. I don't
All of
really
these cases,
know that,
they're still here.
And again, I think what you're trying to do is, this is
Stand
an
up for
approach
victims?
that it's a recycled approach that we heard years ago that interferes with judicial independence and
you're
ignores the Supreme
pro-raper.
Court precedent.
In front of you. You've asked me to give you more than $500 million for health benefits for people who have no legal reason to be in the country that you can't deport. So make the business case. Pitch me. It's Shark Tank. Let's do it.
These are costs to cover interim health measures, emergency measures for
No, no,
people
no,
that
no,
are
no.
coming from war-torn countries.
But
that
it's also
need to
for
be-
bogus asylum
and
claimants.
It's also
Oh, yeah. And we begin for 5 minutes with Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Thank you. Minister, in late September, the Toronto Star reported that there was over 1 million temporary residents that had expiring visas. And yesterday, Statistics Canada said that they had not counted 38% of non-citizens. No wonder that Canadians can't find a family doctor. Will you support an amendment to ensure that your department cannot use the Part 7 powers of C-12 to mass extend temporary resident visas?
Thank you, member, for that question. I know you brought that forward on the committee, and look, I know you worked hard on these, and we appreciate. Well,
This is a new one. So
this is a new one.
Yes, Ask it's
again,
on
then.
notice.
So this is a different one than
Yes,
you brought on the committee.
So will you support an amendment to ensure that your department cannot use the Part 7 powers to mass extend temporary resident visas?
Mass extend. So did you not bring that to committee?
I used procedure in the House, which I can do.
Okay. So when we go back to the House, I mean,
No,
members
you're
will vote
here.
on that.
You're here. Is your department going to use the Part 7 powers to mass extend temporary resident visas?
That is not the purpose for that.
It's a yes or a no.
What I'm saying is that is not the purpose for those amendments.
No, I'm asking you.
The one example I will give you is during COVID, my understanding is the workers that were here at the time, and this is facts, were not allowed to leave the country, who were working here temporarily. So I believe that was an occasion where they could have, or may
So they did. You
extended
do
them
want
to
to
stay
mass
during COVID.
So you do want to mass extend temporary resident visas?
That's not what I said.
That's exactly what you just said.
That's not the purpose for C12.
So I am taking it that the purpose of those powers, based on what you just said, is to mass extend the millions of temporary resident visas that are in the country.
I believe I testified when I was here before on the immigration provisions in C2, which are identical to C12.
You didn't testify on this.
No, but the same thing would follow on the whether you extend or the opposite of extending, annulling.
You were
These are
confused in the House.
exceptional circumstances. These are not something that we
Yes. So there's
look to do.
There's 3 million people in the country on temporary resident visas. That is an exceptional circumstance. It's never happened before in Canadian history. It happened under your government. In the spring, you told me your government has no plans to remove them. You just said that if you had these powers during COVID, you would have extended temporary resident visas. So I don't want you to use your powers to extend temporary resident visas. That's bad. So can you tell the committee whether or not you intend to use those powers to extend the visas or not?
Let me clarify. No one minister will have that power individually, whether you're extending or doing the opposite of the extending.
So here's the thing.
These will go to cabinet. These will go to an OIC.
Yes.
These will be transparent. These are not something that will be done.
So just to be clear, our emergency rooms are overflowing. We have a youth jobs crisis. The provinces, including Quebec, are telling you that they need more money because of the temporary residents. And you are now telling the committee that it is highly possible that you are going to use the powers in Part 7
Point of order,
to
Chair.
do that.
No.
This is my line of...
No, point of order, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Point of order, Mr.
For the
Fredericks.
purposes of the record, I did not hear the minister say those words. Let's just be clear
Can I
about what
respond
was
on
said
that point of order?
and what was not said.
We are restarting your time, Ms.
No,
Rempel-Garner.
on that point of order.
You have another point of order?
Yes, I do. I appreciate that my colleague may likely be the
No,
minister in a couple
not
of
a point of order.
months.
Not a point of
but
order.
for now,
Not a
I
point of order.
get to ask the current minister.
Not
maybe
a point of order.
Thank you.
So please continue with your time.
Maybe I will be likely having this conversation with him in a couple of months. So, Minister, I understand the Liberals want to silence me and rescue you. They shouldn't let him rescue you. He's going to have your job. Will you support an amendment to ensure that your government can't mass extend 3 million people because you have no plan to remove them? Yes or no? And this is really bad. Can you just
Listen,
be clear?
member, when you ask a question, I think you should be able to have decency to let someone respond. If you don't like any responses, then please continue
I don't
to
like
do
your
what
word
you'd like.
salad. It's true.
So-
You are a very bad minister.
Oh, you
So
know what?
will you
I
support
prefer
my-
fattoush and tabbouleh to your salad at any time.
That is the oddest thing any immigration minister
Well,
has
and-
said at this committee. It's very
No, but
weak
it's
and
my culture. I
will
can't-
likely
it
be
is what
added
it
to your
is.
performance review. So will you
Thank you so
support
much.
a Part 7 amendment to ensure that your government cannot use the mass extension powers the powers in Part 7 to mass extend millions of temporary resident visas?
So, member, you're
Your
free
answer
to make
literally-
any amendments you like within
Will
the
you support it?
procedure that is there. I will take a look, just like any reasonable minister, reasonable whatever.
do you
in
think
terms
millions
of
of
what you put
residents
forth.
should
Thank
be
you, Minister.
extended?
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Garner. That is time. Next, we have Michelle Rempel-Garner for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. In December of 2023, a non-citizen went to a hotel here in Canada to meet a 15-year-old for sex, in which he had agreed to pay for these services. He only received 3 months of house arrest and was allowed to go shopping for 3 hours every Sunday throughout these 3 months. His sentencing was lessened so as not to affect his immigration status. Do you think the criminal inadmissibility component, so Section 36(1) of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. Do you think that that kept Canadians safe here in this situation?
Thank you, member, for that question. I know you know that sentencing decisions are made independently by the courts, where the federal government, though, is responsible for the law is for removals. But under the immigration law, a non-citizen convicted of a serious violent is subject to deportation.
Right, but I'll just stop you there for a sec. So you're actually, since you've had trouble understanding questions today, you, as the immigration minister, surprise, are you're actually responsible for the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. And that section is under your portfolio. So this guy was convicted of a serious crime. They used a loophole in Section 36(1) to ensure that his sentence was reduced so that he could stay in Canada. Is that good or bad?
So there is no federal law that requires judges to reduce a sentence because of immigration consequences. That is the truth.
Right. So I'm asking you about Section 36. I'm just going to remind you, this is part of your portfolio. So this is your department. Do you think that that section is working? Do you think that, I'll give you another example. There was a 25-year-old who was on a study permit. He sexually assaulted an 18-year-old at a club in my city in Calgary. He was found guilty, and this judge reduced his sentence because of that provision in that bill you're responsible for. The definition of serious criminality, it doesn't work. I just want to feel like, do you think that's bad? Like, do you think that maybe we should change that so that people who are non-citizens who are convicted of things like sexual assault get auto-deported rather than just kind of sticking around and doing it again, maybe?
So we have legislation in front of us that will ensure serious crimes get dealt with seriously,
Which
including
legislation?
deportations. The immigration. So even the judge in the case said
No. Go back. Tell me
that
which law
we
you're
were
talking
not
about.
to override the seriousness of the offense. Might be a factor to
So you don't know
consider,
which
but
law
it
you
will-
just said?
Absolutely no. It would not override the offense.
I really think you have no idea what you're talking about. It's really sad. We're talking about non-citizens who are convicted of serious crime being allowed to stay in Canada. So we put forward an amendment to Bill C-12, which would have corrected this. I did your job for you. I think Peter might be doing your job for you in a couple of months. But you guys didn't support that. So I'm asking you as
order,
like
Chair.
just somebody.
Yes, point of order, Mr. Fragiscatos.
Let's just maintain the focus on the subject at hand, which is immigration, please.
I would love to maintain the focus, but the minister, like,
we're back on your time,
the
Ms.
minister just
Rempel-Garner.
doesn't. She can't even answer a basic question. So I'm asking you. You have people, non-citizens who have been convicted of sexual assault, and judges are using a serious criminality loophole that's in your bill, in your department. Do you think that should maybe be changed?
People who are committing serious offenses will be deported. I'll tell you.
No, this guy wasn't. He's still here.
Well, we're talking now. I can't
minute.
talk. I don't know what year you're referring to. I
All
don't
of these
really know
cases,
the,
they're still here.
And again, I think what you're trying to do is, this is
Stand
an
up for
approach
victims?
that it's a recycled approach that we heard years ago that interferes with judicial independence and
you're
ignores the Supreme
pro-raper.
Court precedent. But again, I say to you, the courts have already indicated that serious offenses will be
You're
dealt with
pro-sexual
seriously.
assault guys staying in
and-
Canada. That's what we're hearing. Like, can't you even just say that this is wrong and you'll look into it? Like, did nobody even say, like, maybe you could just say, Minister, this is really serious. You should say it's serious. I'm going to look into it. Maybe we could work together on it. You just defended a guy who, like, sexually assaulted
don't know
somebody
the
and should be
cases. I don't know the
deported. And you're the
facts.
immigration minister.
I don't know the facts you're
I just
referring
told
to.
you. I've raised it in the House, and you guys have done nothing. And it's continuing every day. It's rampant in our justice system. You have the responsibility to do this, and you've done nothing. Why?
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Thank you, Minister Diab. And we begin with Ms. Rempel-Garner. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So you're asking Parliament to give your department about $600 million extra dollars for the interim federal health program, and that is the program by which you give a lot of supplemental benefits like vision care and mental health supports to people even who have failed asylum claims. Do you think that it's fair that, like, let's say a Canadian senior who has paid taxes all their lives get less types of supplementary benefits than asylum seeker who has a failed claim, like somebody who's a bogus asylum claimant? Do you think, like, why should I give you $600 million for bogus asylum claimants when Canadian seniors can't get basic health care? How does that make any sense to you?
So thanks for that. Couple of things. One, if you took a look at the budget, we have introduced a copay to handle some of that.
How much do you expect people to pay?
But as well, the dollar amount that you referred to stems from the fact that it is an interim federal health program where the volumes were up from years ago.
Yes, because you hashtag welcome to Canada 300, 500, 600,000 people who have bogus asylum claims. I'm aware that the numbers are up, and that's why you're asking us for. I just asked you, is it fair? Like, you're asking taxpayers, us to send you $600 million to pay for things like orthotics and vision care for people who have bogus asylum claimants and are still in the country. So is that fair? Why would I do that? That seems dumb to me.
So listen, I realize it's not something you would do, but I can tell you these money goes for people that are here because of human trafficking, goes for women that are here because of domestic violence.
Great, let's give it to those people. Why are you giving them to bogus people with failed asylum claims?
The duration of which these are temporary, so that they receive interim health.
So if somebody
measures.
has a failed asylum claim, they can still receive federal benefits. Why? That's dumb.
Again, we are introducing measures to ensure that we limit and curb those.
But
and
why
with
don't you
measures
just
that you
cut
are
it off?
obstructing, quite frankly.
Well, yes, I'm accepting it. I think it's completely insane that you are giving better health benefits to people with bogus asylum claims than Canadian seniors. So I'm happy to obstruct that. Why wouldn't you obstruct that? Why wouldn't you say, this is banana crackers?
The fact that we're trying to ensure that does not get done.
No, you actually are just asking. So if you look in the document you have in front of you, you've asked me to give you more than $500 million for health benefits for people who have no legal reason to be in the country that you can't deport. So make the business case. Pitch me. It's Shark Tank. Let's do it.
These are costs to cover interim health measures, emergency measures for people that are coming from war-torn countries.
But it's also for bogus asylum claimants.
And it's also for treating people with diseases. I think, No.
I want to be clear here. We've tried to pass measures to restrict, like if somebody has a failed asylum claim, bogus, that they should be deported rather than get benefits.
And that's exactly what we're doing. We're introducing measures to ensure that speeds up and not exactly.
Yeah, but you're still
happens.
giving them benefits, so why would they leave? And you're allowing them to endlessly appeal. Why would you, this is crazy.
So the measures that we're putting in would curb all of that.
Yeah. Okay. Why are you still giving TFW work permits to fast food restaurants in major urban centers? That's crazy.
Again, as I explained before, the ESDC goes through and decides where we have labor gaps. People who are getting these, businesses who are getting these have to go through an LMIA assessment.
Did you tell Patty I'm a little uncomfortable issuing these permits? We have a 20% youth job crisis. I am not going to give Tim Hortons in urban centers work permits. We should change the program. Have you said that to your colleague?
Any employer that receives these goes through a strenuous process where they have to show they cannot find as well. It's 1% of our target.
But there's a lot of fraud in that, and I have a hard time believing that a fast food restaurant in downtown Toronto needs a TFW for basic work. So have you made any effort to close the program off? Like if you said, hey, maybe we should bet on Canadian kids and scrap the program?
We're always betting on Canadian kids. That's why we have what we have. As in terms of facts, there's a 70% decrease
that
in
is
the temporary
time.
foreign
Thank you,
worker
Ms. Rempel-Gardner.
permits in low-wage industries.
Thank you, Minister Diab. Colleagues, I'm going to ask again, please direct your questions and comments through the chair. Please direct your comments and questions through the chair. Thank you. Next.
What a wild time in Canadian federal politics. Get your opinion right here. I know you can form a solid opinion of your own. You're a smart Canadian. Watch the Frontline Politics. Do not trust the legacy media. Watch things like this. Independent YouTubers that are trying to get the information out there. That's what we're doing here. Anyhow, let's check out the latest reason that we need to get rid of these liberal nut jobs. Like, they're taxing us and driving us into an economic disaster, trying to ruin our way of being. Anyhow, let's check out the latest thing that's been happening on Parliament Hill. Let's take a peek.
But the worst was yet to come. After Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine, the Liberals forced that desperate nation to renegotiate their free trade deal with Canada. The Liberal goal was to impose carbon tariffs on Ukraine if the Ukrainians did not increase their own carbon tax to match Canada.
And then you put out a statement saying nobody should work for free? You knew they were working for free. They told you in those meetings. Are you familiar with the term gaslighting? You just gaslit every flight attendant with that video. Or are you saying that when they told you they worked for free, they were lying to you?
What I said was that we would conduct a probe to understand.
Get into debates about issues like this, like the absolute decimation of the Canadian auto sector. What we find is that Liberal members love to get up and talk about programs and funding envelopes and all these other wonderful things that they're allegedly doing that are supposed to make things work. But let's talk about the facts. And the facts are pretty terrible. The facts are that we've now lost 3,000 jobs at the Brampton Assembly Plant. We've lost over 1,000 jobs at the Bright Drop Assembly Plant. Honda is losing approximately $900 per vehicle that they export to the United States. So who knows how long that's going to continue. And every time we bring this up, they get up and say, oh yeah, but there's a trade war, as if we're not aware of the fact there's a trade war. But the problem with the trade war is a couple of things. Number one, the Prime Minister has stood in this chamber and said, we have the best deal on auto in the world, as if he's proud of what's happened with the 10% tariffs on auto, because that's what he's saying. We have the best deal in the world. So it's either incredible ignorance or he actually doesn't care, because I've spoken with Unifor local presidents in the auto assembly industry. I've spoken with the Unifor Skilled Trades Council, and they've told me that the Canadian auto sector cannot survive at a 10% tariff. And yet we have a Prime Minister standing up in this chamber and bragging about how we have the lowest auto tariffs in the world. It's actually an unbelievable insult to every single auto worker in this country. And we know the results of what's happening with these tariffs: the layoffs in Brampton, the layoffs in Bright Drops, the layoffs in the auto sector in general. And you also have to then think of what this Prime Minister said just a little over a week ago when asked what the status of the negotiations with President Trump was. Who cares? That's boring. The same Prime Minister who is bragging about a 10% tariff that is decimating the Canadian auto industry.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters.
Now, if that's not bad enough, let's talk about some of these programs that they like to brag about, like the member from Guelph was just rhyming off as if there's some amazing development for the Canadian auto industry. They signed a contract with Stellantis specifically with respect to the Brampton Assembly Plant. In that agreement, they were going to give up to $1 billion for retooling of the Brampton Assembly Plant and another assembly plant. And as part of that, there was supposed to be a jobs guarantee. And we've heard the Minister of Industry say, I saw her at committee say, there's a jobs guarantee. We asked her what section of the contract. She couldn't say what section of the contract. And why couldn't she say that, Mr. Speaker? Because she didn't read the contract. And we also heard the industry ministry before that. He said he didn't read the contract. So we have ministers who are signing multi-billion-dollar contracts and not reading them. Well, let me tell you something a little bit about contracts, because I did actually go to law school, and I remember taking contracts in law school. If you have a jobs guarantee as they describe, how are they able to lay off 3,000 workers at the Stellantis plant in Brampton? Because at the time they signed the agreement with Stellantis in Brampton, there was a total of 8,000 Stellantis workers in Canada. So if they had a jobs guarantee as they suggest, does the job guarantee allow them to lay off almost 50% of the workforce?
Broken, Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid, okay? Canada's broken because we're stupid.
And still get almost $1 billion. It's outrageous. The incompetence from these Liberals is stunning and staggering. No one gets held accountable. In fact, the minister who signed this contract that's allowed them to lay off all these workers when there's so-called a jobs guarantee was promoted to finance minister. And let's talk about the zero-emission vehicle mandates that these people keep talking about. When I was a shadow minister through the environment, I asked exactly where we were on building out the charging infrastructure and the power generation. Nowhere. We are nowhere near getting it done.
Precise and as concise as you can, so we can get enough questions in. So I begin for the Conservatives with Mr. Mazier for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Dr. Houston. Dr. Houston, how many foreign doctors did the University of Toronto train last year through the visa trainee program?
So last year, in total, we had 459 physicians in this program.
Program.
In the residency program.
Thank you.
And the fellowship program. So total residency and fellowship.
How many returned to their home country after training?
They are all expected to return to their home country. It is part of the contract that we have with their sponsor that the trainee also signs on to.
How many visa trainees completed their training at the University of Toronto last year?
I don't have that exact number, but I can provide it to you because they range from PGY 1s to PGY 7s. We accept between 2 and 4 residents into family medicine, and they return after 2 years. Those in the Royal College specialty and subspecialties train for a variable number of years, depending on the residency program.
So, you have a...
And we begin with Mr. Ma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mr. Copeland. Mr. Copeland, you wrote a piece in Without Diminishment, citing the Global Flourishing Study. You highlighted that the strongest predator of flourishing are stable families, marriage, religious participation, meaningful work, and strong communities. Leading up,
no one shows this.
To that, do you agree that our national level of immigration should be tied to housing, healthcare, and job considerations in tying all that together?
Thank you for the question. I do think that our annual immigration plan should be informed by information such as housing completions, rental rates in major metropolitan areas, things like social service availability, how available are healthcare services, and what have you in areas where immigrants want to migrate to. I think we can also look at social trust barometers. Again, the General Social Survey does have some information on this. It could be packaged and produced better and updated more frequently. I think these sort of things would establish a baseline and then trends that could help inform levels planning. The more information, the better.
Thank you. You also wrote that the flourishing requirements commitment to people, place, and tradition. So again, in terms of traditions, what weight would you give to residency requirements, language proficiency test, and citizenship tests?
That's a great question. I think more weight should be given to them. I'm not going to come out with a number here, but I think very clearly we're in a situation right now where the balance lies away from those things, and I think we need a greater balance. So that's what we should be aiming for here. We should study the matter further and reflect upon that and aim to stress these things to right the balance.
Thank you. And you end off with the article stressing that both policy and culture should cultivate dependencies rightly ordered to family, community, and nation. Can you elaborate in more detail the relationship between the current housing crisis and the failure of family formation?
Yeah, certainly. So it is certainly a factor cited, that the inability to secure housing is one factor among many that is deterring family formation, and we have an all-time low fertility rate. It's something that has economic, cultural, and social consequences, and so I think we need to be mindful of these sorts of things and not neglect kind of the struggles of some of the domestic population in our immigration planning.
Would you say that may lead to dilution of the values of being a Canadian?
What would, sorry?
Sorry, if immigrants and others coming into the country, would they actually lead to any kind of dilution of our Canadian values?
I think it really depends on a number of things. It's about pace,
it's
about the scale, and it's about the stress on integration and also the supports provided. So we have to look at these things all together, and I think the extent to which trust is improved or decreases is a result of many factors. Some of the other big influences on social trust are rule of law, adherence to the rule of law, its predictability and consistency, the degree to which people believe burdens are shared reasonably and systems aren't being exploited, and both of those things I think are affected by Canadians' perceptions and the realities of various parts of the immigration system.
Thank you. Very short.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Blanchard. Mr. Carney's conflicts involving Brookfield are vast by any objective standard. That is why the Ethics Commissioner saw fit to impose special compliance measures, including the ethics screen that you, along with Mr. Sabia, administer, which includes, of course, 103 companies, most of which are Brookfield related. Mr. Sabia, in his testimony yesterday before this committee, referenced that the Ethics Commissioner personally told Mr. Carney that he should not be meeting with Brookfield. Yet on August 11th, only 1 month after the ethics screen was put in place, Mr. Carney was speaking with and taking photos with Sam Pollock, who is none other than the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure, and who also just happened to serve on the board of Brookfield Asset Management when Mr. Carney was chair. So here we have the Ethics Commissioner telling Mr. Carney not to meet with Brookfield, and 1 month later, Mr. Carney is doing precisely that. How do you explain that, Mr. Blanchard?
Le Premier ministre du Canada est bien au courant de ses
The Prime Minister of Canada is well aware of his ethical requirements, and he follows them, each and every one of them. What was done by the Prime Minister, and after talks with the Ethics Commissioner, we implemented these rigorous measures to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest.
The Prime Minister was told specifically not to meet with Brookfield. And there he is meeting with Brookfield. Back up before that to April 30th, just 2 days after the federal election. According to the Lobbyist Registry monthly communication report, Mr. Carney was directly lobbied by North River Midstream Incorporated. Now, the Lobbyist Registry indicates that North River Midstream Incorporated, the parent company, is none other than Brookfield. So again, we have the Prime Minister directly meeting, being directly lobbied, this time on energy policy, by Brookfield. Again, not following the spirit of the ethics screen.
Il y avait des mesures éthiques qui étaient mises en place.
There were ethical measures that had been implemented at the
very reactive as opposed to proactive. One company alone had built 36 different federal departments, billing for the same hours in a given day. Why was that not detected in 2018 when they submitted their invoices with your advanced data analytics? Why wasn't that caught, Minister?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh, yeah. What's up, gang? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We try to learn as much as we can about Canadian federal politics. We didn't pay attention for a couple of years. Things went out of hand. And now we have this Trudeau, Jagmeet, Liberal NDP coalition, Poilievre waiting in the wings just for an election because 70% of Canadians want an election now. That's what the polls say. There are so many things happening, so many scams and scandals with this Trudeau, NDP, Liberal, Jagmeet coalition. It's just a mess. A corrupt cabinet of unlikable ministers. So many things going on. Let's take a peek at this. Cue the card. Let's see what we're going to watch in this next video. Things here are wild. Let's see what we got coming up.
Horizontal audit yesterday.
I'll ask a direct question. Have you, to this date, been in direct contact with all departments and agencies regarding privacy impact assessments, particularly as it relates to the story that broke on the 13 departments? Have you reached out to everybody?
With our team through annual reporting. Dom, could you fulfill that?
Very quickly, because I'm respectful of your time. Departments and agencies are responsible for providing personal information banks for all their programs and activities.
Respectfully, sir, the question was to the president. The president did not answer it. It just was as simple. You just said, like, take responsibility as a president.
Yeah,
did you reach out to everybody, Anita? Yes or no? It's that simple. If it's no, then it's no.
Okay, Minister. Quickly.
Yes, the department has been in contact. Okay. Thank you for the question.
It wasn't that hard.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Brock for 5. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, privacy is extremely important to Canadians and public servants, but so is safeguarding the prudent use of taxpayer funds. Federal spending on outsourcing increased to $14.6 billion last year, which is 74% higher than when the Liberals under Justin Trudeau promised in 2015 to cut back on the use of external consultants. We now have evidence that the ArriveCan ballooned to at least $60 million. What you announced yesterday with your colleague, Minister Duclos, in my view, is only the tip of the iceberg, because Minister Duclos confirmed yesterday that the 3 companies in question that fraudulently billed taxpayers $5 million had nothing to do with ArriveCan, which brings into the broader question of that $14.6 billion in outsourcing. How many billions of dollars, how many millions of dollars more in fraudulent contracting schemes are out there? I know you talk about advanced data analytics, and this is how you uncovered the data. But the government always had this data capability. So the biggest problem that Canadians have with your government, Minister, is you're very reactive as opposed to proactive. One company alone had built 36 different federal departments, billing for the same hours in a given day. Why was that not detected in 2018 when they submitted their invoices with your advanced data analytics? Why wasn't that caught, Minister?
I want to specify that the Treasury Board did not have any involvement with the development of the Arrive Can
I'm
Act.
talking in a broader sense.
And-
Why wasn't the government able, with the capabilities of data analytics, to capture this in 2018 when it happened?
The app was built on an emergency basis under exceptional circumstances.
And the Auditor General basically said that a pandemic and the urgency does not mean you throw out the rules out the window. You had an obligation to safeguard taxpayer monies, and you abused that. You misused that. So what assurances do Canadians have that we're going to get to the bottom of the millions, if not billions of dollars?
Respecting.
Let me finish the question. What assurance can you give Canadians that you're going to actually follow up, you're going to identify these companies, you're going to refer it to the RCMP for possible investigation and criminal charges? What can you say about that?
I agree with the findings of the Auditor General's report. That is why I published yesterday an update to the Manager's Guide on Professional Services. I have also tabled through a series of estimates that we are reducing our reliance on outsourcing, including in the estimates prior to the holidays, $350 million in outsourcing contracts being reduced. Furthermore, reductions in the recent estimates that I have tabled to about $900 million in total. So we are working on continuing to reduce our reliance on outsourcing. That is something I take extremely seriously, and that's what I emphasized in my announcement yesterday.
Minister, your former role, one of your former roles, was Minister of Public Services and Procurement. You held that role from November the 20th, 2019 to October 26, 2021. I had before me the mandate letter that Justin Trudeau sent to you, and I'm going to read out various passages. I expect us to continue to raise the bar on openness, effectiveness, and transparency in government. It also means humility and continuing to acknowledge mistakes when we make them. Canadians do not expect us to be perfect. They expect us to be diligent, honest, open, and sincere in our efforts to serve the public interest. Your leader, Justin Trudeau, has been anything but apologetic. So I'm going to give you the opportunity, Minister. It's plainly obvious to Canadians that that wasted $60 million on an app that was very ineffective, that didn't save one Canadian life, that is now subject to numerous RCMP investigations. Are you prepared to admit your role? Because during the rollout of 177 different versions of the app, you were the minister. Are you prepared here and now to apologize to Canadians for the lack of ministerial oversight? Yes or no?
I was not the minister. The app was developed at CBSA. I was the Minister of Procurement. My mandate was vaccines and PPE.
You were still part of that, according to the Auditor General. Are you prepared to apologize to Canadians?
Was not the minister.
Are you prepared to apologize to Canadians?
Thank you, Mr. Brock. That concludes your time. I appreciate
that. Is
appreciate
incorrect.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Baines, you have 5 minutes.
So what do you think, gang? Canadian loony for certain. Like and subscribe. We have fun sharing all the
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon.
You're looking at hundreds of skiing Santas hitting the slopes for an annual Sunday Santa drive at a ski hill in Maine. This is the 25th year in a row the hills were flooded with red coats and
on skis. There was a few Grinches out there. I saw a couple of Mrs. Claus with almost a longer dress. People are creative.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Christmas.
We were all lining up, snow was coming down. All the kids were lined up watching all the Santas go by where the bunny hills are. Some of the Santas were high-fiving the kids. That was magical. This is an event that they do for charity and that they'll keep doing. It's beautiful. It looked like Santa was like running towards Christmas. It was really cool.
Oh, what fun. The event raised $10,000 in total. It'll be split between the charities. And if you're thinking 300 Santas going down the hill all at the same
Hey, I have a question. The front doors are locked here.
Yeah, what do you need?
I'm trying to get to the queer self-defense class.
Okay, around the corner.
So the south side of the building, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, and it said on the flyer, trans folks fight for free.
Yeah, you're trans.
I'm trans-indigenous.
You're what?
I'm trans-indigenous. My parents, bigoted doctor, assigned me white skin at birth, but I identify as a brown-skinned native.
Dude, get out of here.
Well, are you trans-native phobic?
No.
Well, then what's the problem?
Do you know how confusing this is to people and how you're making a mockery out of natives?
Well, that's ironic, don't you think?
No, we are protecting people here with self-defense.
And that's, I want to participate.
No.
I'm a native. Trans natives are natives, and this is our land.
Dude, I'm calling the cops. Get
Don't misindigenate me. I am not a dude.
Get out of
Don't.
here.
Why are you being trans-native phobic right now?
Please leave.
No. This is my land, and you're trespassing. You're cis-American, so how about you leave?
I need you to leave the property now.
No. What are you going to do?
I'm calling the police.
You're going to call the police on me because I'm a trans-native man of color?
You're mocking people.
That's a hate crime.
No, what you're doing is a hate crime.
Call the police then.
I'm
It's
calling-
really sad you're being trans-native phobic right now.
Dude, I'm-
Folks, this individual is being trans-native phobic. I'm trying to get into a queer self-defense class, and this is how they treat trans people of color.
Billions in new investment create hundreds of thousands of high-paying careers. Or as the National Post headline put it, Mark Carney fast-tracks the road to serfdom. I mean, you can't buy that kind of support, even if we do fund it. It's true, Conrad. It's true. It's true. Just the facts. Helen's here.
Now, you sometimes hear about liberal bias.
Had my COVID and my flu shot. Go get yours. Please don't get sick this winter.
Thank you very much. You've heard the concept of ministerial responsibility, right?
I'm very familiar. I've been Minister of the Crown.
Yeah, the buck stops with you.
I totally, but I would tell you.
You keep talking. No, sir, this is my time to talk. I haven't asked you a question. Okay? You talk about, well, you know, that's not my responsibility, and they're going to be doing this review, or they're going to be making those changes, etc. But ultimately, they report to you, sir. The buck stops with you. And I know that there is a pattern in this Liberal government of ministers not accepting responsibility. I hope you're going to buck that trend and actually show real leadership and actually accept responsibility for this matter.
Everyone has
Hi everyone, good morning. What a great day for Canada.
What? It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Elbows out. Elbows up.
Had no interest in playing the puck, and he leaned into...
Look, I don't think one needs to respond to every comment. Look, Stephanie, I comply with the rules.
Conflicts of interest you
What
sought to
possible
avoid.
conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will.
WTF. Here, here.
The one we call Canadians.